Aizen Suzuki. In the world of Bleach, he is regarded as one of the most powerful characters that has ever appeared throughout the show, ranging from his very first introduction to the very last time we see him. With his high IQ, his busted ability of complete hypnosis, and even his experience of facing off against the most powerful individuals of the show, he is most definitely a very powerful character that shouldn't be reckoned with. Which is exactly why I want to see how things would go if this very character here was reincarnated in the world of Naruto, with him reincarnated as the very main character of the show. I know for sure many of you that clicked on this video are interested in the idea, so why don't we begin? But first, I want to thank the person who recommended this idea, as this will be my 10K special, and I do hope that you who recommended it and everyone else that's watching does enjoy this. But with enough being said, I do believe it's time for us to begin this what if, so with that being said, let's get started.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
So to begin the what if, we're now gonna start out with Naruto's origins. Dating way back, all to the point where Naruto will be a small child, we will see him growing up in the Hidden Leaf Village and remaining pretty similar to his canon counterpart, all the way to the point where he will be at the age of 7, as that's the day that he will truly awaken. During the time of Naruto's birthday, as we see multiple of the villagers celebrating the fact that the nine-tailed fox was gone and just making a ginormous festival out of it, we will see Naruto in his apartment by himself, as currently right now he had no one to celebrate his birthday with. As although he could have gone to Ichiraku Ramen to celebrate his birthday, he knew that by the time of the festival they will have multiple people around their shop, eating and enjoying themselves, and he knew that would actually help out their business and he didn't want to be there to ruin it for them, so he decided to stay behind. And to make it even worse is the fact that he knows that Hiruzen is too busy being the Hokage to visit him as well. So overall, Naruto was in a pretty sad state right now. As he will continue listening to the cheer over the Nine Tails being gone and everything while he's by himself on his birthday, you will see Naruto then soon end up going to bed, as currently right now he had nothing else to do but just simply fall asleep, as he will cry his eyes out for the fact of just how unfair life truly was. But this is when something would then change. As we now turn our attention to Naruto spiritually. As we now turn our attention to Naruto's soul, as we will see it in an infinite void, completely alone by itself, this is when suddenly Naruto's soul begins to release a purple energy. As at first it came out in a small little stream of it, but then suddenly begins to release a generous wave of purplish energy. As we see this energy actually begin to form structures in this infinite void. As after a very quick instance of just seeing this happening, this is when by the time we end up cutting back to the very soul itself, we will see that by now the infinite void has been completely filled up with an amazing structure resembling a palace, a kingdom. As this is when we will then see that a throne had been formed. And that was not the only thing. We also end up seeing that Naruto's very soul itself had also transformed. As we end up seeing that Naruto's soul had transformed from being a regular white blob into an actual human-like being. As we end up seeing this human-like being then begin to approach the throne with a serious look, as he would then take a seat rightfully on this throne, as he would then stare up into the void that was now his kingdom. As this is where we then get a good look at the individual that was currently being seated on this throne. As this was Naruto's soul, but his soul had taken the shape of a very familiar person, as after so many years he had been awakened once again. This being Aizen Suzuki. We see Aizen currently right now sitting down on his throne, as finally after so many years he had been awakened. And this time things were going to go exactly as he expected it to be. As just like that, this is where we now cut back to Naruto. It was still in the night, mind you, as we see Naruto toss and turn before finally he ends up stopping, as he would then end up getting up. And just like that, we will see that Naruto's entire demeanor had completely changed, as we will see the child innocence in his eyes completely vanish and replaced with a much more serious and sophisticated look, one that you normally would not see on a child. As we see Naruto take in the surrounding area, as he begins to analyze all the memories that he has been given, his memories of his old life as Aizen, as well as gathering and organizing the ones that he got from his current life as Naruto Uzumaki. As after understanding this information and organizing it in his mind, this is when we will then see him take a good look at his surroundings before looking outside the village, as he just scoffs, as he can believe the poor living conditions, and not only that, but from what he gathered from his present memories, he could actually understand exactly how this hierarchy system works here in the Hidden Leaf Village. as he simply ends up scoffing at the audacity of it, as he couldn't believe that someone who was younger than him, as mind you, Aizen has been alive for multiple years, and he couldn't believe that someone younger than him was actually the one who he was supposed to follow. That just wasn't right. Although he did appreciate one thing, this being the fact that his present reincarnation seemed to have a similar idea in mind, as he remembered his old dream of becoming the Hokage and everything. But to be honest, that thought process still felt a little bit too low in Aizen's own eyes. In fact, he thought bigger. As putting together all the memories from his old life and remembering everything, including the Soul King, this is when Aizen then comes to the realization that there is no powerful being in this world. There isn't some benevolent being out there who likes to play God and is someone who likes to look over everyone and just organize it with false truth. As he realized that this was his opportunity, as there was no failed genius like Urahara to get in his way, there was no Ichigo Kurosaki either, and he failed to believe that there's anyone in this world that can stand up to him, and more importantly, that can stand up to Hyoika Sugetsu. As suddenly tapping his foot on the ground, this is when we would then hear glass shattering, as you see the katana then rise from the ground as he takes a good look at it with a smirk. As now finally, with his intentions cleared and a goal in mind, this is when we would then see Naruto then make a vow as he decides that he's going to become the new ruler of this world, the deity that it needs, and this time, no one was going to get in his way. Everything was going to go exactly as according to plan, and if anyone were to even attempt to stand in his way, then he'll gladly finish them out before they even get the chance. As now with that thought in mind, this is where we now do a time skip. Flashing forward to a couple of years in the future, we end up seeing a drastic change to Naruto's living condition, his attitude, and basically everything about him. Something that caused Hiruzen to be extremely worried, yet at the same time extremely suspicious of the young child. It all started after Naruto's 7th birthday, as you see after that, a suspicious event had occurred. A fire had occurred at Naruto's apartment that completely burned it to the ground, as that would cause Naruto to have no choice but to be moved to a much more safer and better apartment. And surprisingly enough, the only one that was available to Hiruzen right now was one that lived near the Anbu base. Something that made Hiruzen completely surprised, considering the fact that he would have sworn that there was other apartments that were available. But surprisingly, no. The only one that was available was the one that was at the Anbu base. So with no other choice, Hiruzen decided to put Naruto there, and after thinking it over, he thought it was a good idea, since he was able to keep tabs on Naruto, and not only that, but Naruto would be protected because he lives near the Anbu. But this is when strange things began to occur after Naruto was moved near the Anbu base. As after being moved near it, Naruto began to experience multiple different changes, and he would change way too drastically, or at least in Hiruzen's eyes. As you see Naruto change from being a very stubborn, energetic, and quite frankly stupid child, into one that was being way more sophisticated, mature, serious, and overall someone who was the complete opposite to his normal self. And this began to make Hiruzen actually pretty happy at first, since he thought that finally Minato's genes were kicking in. But it was during this time that eventually Hiruzen would actually begin to get a twig of fear after looking at Naruto. As during the time, he'll see that Naruto begins to develop habits that are very similar to Orochimaru. And this will cause Hiruzen to slowly but surely begin to call Naruto a flight risk. As after all, if Naruto turns into someone like Orochimaru, and with him having the 9 tails as well, then dear lord, may Hashirama protect them all. But at the same time though, this would cause Hiruzen to begin to act much more coldly towards Naruto, and begin to keep a much closer eye on him, to the point where he even has Anbus keeping an eye on Naruto 24/7, putting them in rotations in different shifts, and Naruto made sure that Naruto was observed all the time. But even then, even when Naruto was under constant observations, Hiruzen's suspicions would go even further, as even though he had been reported back multiple times that Naruto had done nothing more but kept on his daily routine. And even though Hiruzen would hear this all the time, he simply couldn't bring himself to believe it. As every single time he would hear it, he would tell the Anbus that they did a good job, but at the same time, his instincts would continue telling him that something was wrong about this, as he decided ultimately that he couldn't even trust the words of his own Anbu. And from now on, when it came to Naruto, he would treat him with extra precaution, as after all, he doesn't need a second Orochimaru out there, and he believes that Naruto might be falling into Orochimaru's old footsteps. And speaking of Naruto, turning to him, we see him begin to get increasingly more annoyed when it came to Hiruzen, as the age-old Hokage continued trying to keep his best visuals on Naruto, and at the same time, Naruto could see him over time beginning to grow more and more suspicious of him and begin to treat him more and more coldly. And although at first this made Naruto very amused by the fact that Hiruzen there thought that he could actually do anything to him, but over time he began to think of Hiruzen like an insect, as Hiruzen continued trying his best to keep Naruto under control and under his observation. And this made Naruto truly wonder exactly why do inferior beings do this? Why do they think that they have any control or authority or even have the dare rights to even gaze upon someone that was of course far greater than them? But it was fine, as after all, Hiruzen was not the Soul King in his old life. He was nowhere near that level. In fact, he was inferior to even the Soul King, and that guy was a plain idiot, or at least in Naruto, or should I say Aizen's eyes. So due to that, he decided that he's gonna let Hiruzen slide, but if he continues to annoy him and continues trying his best to get in his way, well then, he already had plans to deal with the age-old Hokage. As now with that said, this is where we then continue on with the story. Continuing with the story, we end up seeing Naruto as he eventually ends up heading off to the academy, and throughout this time we see that Naruto will be thriving at the top of his class. Naruto would actually be pretty highly respected throughout his time, as even though he was treated with criticism and plain disrespect by his teachers, Naruto would continue thriving and continue pushing himself even further, as even though he was given, very harder tests, he will still end up succeeding with high scores, as this outcome would actually surprise many of the teachers and also many of the students. As over time, many of them begin to change the way they actually think of Naruto, as the teachers that once were mean to him and obviously showed discrimination to him began to change their ways, as they began to actually allow Naruto to participate in class and everything, and even then Naruto was a perfect ideal student, being respectful to the teacher, following the rules, doing what they say, as overall Naruto in their eyes was being an ideal student, as this caused many of them to change the way they act towards Naruto. Although there was one person who did not change his ways, this being Mizuki, but good thing to know was the fact that he got fired and honestly had gone missing on a certain day. No one has known exactly where he went or what happened to him. All they know is that one day he just simply stopped attending the academy, for whatever odd reason. But nonetheless, things continue on as we see Naruto continue just graduating at the top of his class, but here's the thing. One thing will be stopping Naruto from actually going into his life as a shinobi, as no matter how many times the teachers, his Anbus that were watching him, and basically everyone kept telling Hiruzen that Naruto was ready for the shinobi life and how he was an ideal student and everything, again, Hiruzen by this point has fully decided to consider Naruto a flight risk. And considering the fact he did not want to risk Naruto going out there in the shinobi life too early, he decided to make Naruto stay in the academy 3 more times. And every single time Naruto would graduate at the top of his class, even taking advanced courses and everything, and yet all the time Hiruzen would deny the request. Now this action would actually cement Naruto's decision when it came to dealing with Hiruzen, but for now he decided to wait his time and wait patiently for the day that he could actually take down Hiruzen. As now with those thoughts in mind, this is where we now do another time skip. Flashing forward to Naruto's now 3rd year in the academy, we see him once again graduating at the top of his class, and in this year, we actually end up seeing all the main characters there as well. As we now turn our attention to the graduating class, as we see all the students currently right now riled up about the fact they're about to be shinobis. As this is when Iruka would then walk in, as Iruka begins to pretty much say his thanks to everyone, stating how grateful he was about everyone being here, and more precisely, he's very happy to see that Naruto was finally graduating. Is at the mention of Naruto, we will see many of the students actually begin to applaud him, mostly because of the fact that Naruto became quite a favorite in the classroom. As after all, he was always there to lend a hand, he was more mature than everyone else, he was the top student, so basically Naruto was pretty much deemed with a high amount of favoritism by everyone that was in the classroom. As after Naruto was cheered for about the fact that he was graduating, this is when the teams will then be called out. And to the surprise of everyone, Naruto's team will be Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, just like they do in the main timeline. Now everyone begins to cry in uproar, mostly because of the fact that Naruto and Sasuke was on a team, since that was way too unfair. Sasuke, while not getting the Rookie of the Year just like he does in the main timeline, he was still the 2nd best of the class. So due to that, they thought that was unfair, and not only that, but Sakura was still the top Konoichi. But still nonetheless, Iruka tells them that that was the report that the Hokage gave him, and that's the report that they're gonna follow. So with no other choice, everyone gets on their individual's team just like they do in the main timeline, and just like that, this is when Kakashi will end up arriving, after a total of 3 hours. But still regardless of that, we see Kakashi end up arriving, and when he does, he ends up telling them the same instruction as he does in the main timeline, as we end up seeing all of them end up going up there. And when they are there, they'll all give their introductions. Naruto's introduction is different of course, but basically it's just listing off the things that he likes, the things that he dislikes, and basically what his goals and ambitions are. Which when it comes to his goals and ambitions, Naruto, he doesn't say anything about being Hokage and decides to mostly keep it for himself. Now, of course, Kakashi would look at it with interest since he remembered as a kid Naruto wanted to become Hokage before that certain day that his birthday had came up. But now, seeing that the kid has fully matured and everything, Kakashi decided to just leave it alone since he believed that now Naruto was fully taking up his role as an adult. And not only that, but he honestly felt quite proud for Naruto considering the fact that at this moment, Naruto looked very similar to that of Minato. So much so to the point where Kakashi nearly got whiplash just from simply looking at Naruto. But still nonetheless, he was still able to continue on, as after this introduction, Kakashi would then announce the bell test, as after giving them a whole day to prepare and everything, as well as giving them the warning about eating breakfast, he would then leave. As after that, we can just do a brief time skip since nothing important happens there, as after that, we will then turn to the very day of the bell test, as we see Kakashi end up arriving. As now that Kakashi had arrived, this is when he would then announce the beginning of the bell test. We see all of them then hide as Kakashi would be there analyzing where they went, and surprise surprise, he's able to find Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto quite easily. Now he has to admit he wasn't expecting too much from these latest genin since they weren't exactly born in the era that he was in. So he decided to go after the very first one that he honestly paid the most attention to, this being Minato's son. As after all, Naruto had been in the academy for 3 whole years, even taking advanced courses, so he wanted to see just how strong he really was. As we end up seeing Kakashi disappear from the clearing, this is when he would then end up running up upon Naruto as he sees Naruto just casually there reading a book. Now he would actually end up approaching Naruto with his own book, asking Naruto exactly what he was reading, considering the fact that this was still an exam. And this is when Naruto would just smirk, stating that it's a very interesting book, one that Kakashi would be very familiar with. As Kakashi would look at Naruto in confusion, he would then look back at the book that Naruto was reading, only to be surprised to see that that book was now his own book, as he ends up seeing that his own copy of Make Out Paradise was now currently in the hands of Naruto. As he ends up looking at his own book to see what he was holding in his hands, he will see that it had been replaced by a completely different book, one that he didn't care at all for. As he ends up tossing it aside, this is when he would then begin to release a powerful pressure, telling Naruto to give it back. And Naruto, after hearing this, will then say, sure. As he ends up tossing the book to Kakashi, who tries to reach for it, only to be surprised when his very own dear beloved book would then be burned to ash right before his eyes. As he ends up looking at it in complete shock, as Naruto would just be there looking at him with a fake sad expression, stating that he apologizes for the inconvenience. And just like that, Kakashi would then get a very unnerving look on his face as he would then rush at Naruto, deciding that it was now finally time to test him. He ends up kicking Naruto out the trees as Naruto will be caught off guard by it, as this is when Kakashi begins to immediately get into hand-to-hand combat against Naruto. And Kakashi could admit, Naruto was impressive, but still regardless of that, he expected more. As after going hand-to-hand with Naruto and after sending him flying a couple of times as revenge for his Make Out Paradise, this is when Kakashi would then use the Headhunter Jutsu, as he ends up burying Naruto in the ground, similar to what he did to Sasuke in the main timeline. As after doing that, Kakashi would then tell Naruto that he shouldn't destroy other people's things, with Naruto looking down in fake sadness, telling him that he understands. As we end up seeing Kakashi then get up as he ends up leaving Naruto at the spot, unaware about the fact that Naruto's expression had completely changed to that of a smirk, as this is where we then do a change of scenes as well as a time skip. So after facing off against Sasuke and Sakura and also defeating them, he tied up the entirety of Team 7 onto a log pose, making sure to very specifically tie up Naruto the most as another revenge for his Make Out Paradise being completely destroyed. As he ends up telling Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke the meaning about being a shinobi, this is when he begins to announce that all of them had failed the test and stating that they all failed considering the fact that they also didn't even get a bell. As after that, he will then begin to go on a rant about all their flaws, making sure to turn to every single person. But the one thing he ends up getting surprised about is the fact that when he turns to Naruto, he sees Naruto just calmly looking at him with a smirk. As this is when Naruto would then suddenly end up saying, "Time's up." As this is where we then fade to black. Changing scenes, we end up seeing the attention of both Sasuke and Sakura as they look at the scene before them in complete shock, as they end up seeing none other than Naruto as he just casually walked up to Kakashi, who was still in the middle of the field, as he just casually ended up taking both of the bells away from him. As after that, they just sat there watching in shock as it would just stay like that for a solid 2 minutes or maybe even more, as they just stayed there looking at him, although they're thinking in their mind there's no way that actually happened, there's no way he let it happen. But soon afterwards, they would then hear it, the bell ringing. As this is when we would then see Kakashi then snap back as he ends up looking around only to see that number one, Naruto had the bells in hand. Number 2, both Sasuke and Sakura by this point had finally exited out of their hiding places and were now looking at him as if he was stupid. And number 3, the bell was ringing. He actually ended up losing the 2 bells, and that meant that Naruto had passed. As after a brief moment of getting over his shock, eventually Kakashi begins to ask Naruto what he's going to do with the 2 bells, and Naruto would surprisingly give them to both Sasuke and Sakura, surprising to both of them. Now, Naruto then says that he's willing to go back to the academy, but then both Sakura and Sasuke will then say the same thing. And this will make Kakashi proud, but at the same time, in his mind, he'll be trying to work out the gears of what just happened. As one minute he was fighting Naruto, the next minute, by that point, he already caught Sasuke and Sakura, and now he found out that all that didn't happen. He was here the entire time, and to make it even worse was the fact that Naruto got a bell, and also the entire team passed. So yeah, Kakashi, he felt as if he was losing his mind. But eventually over time, and for a very brief moment of silence, Kakashi decided to just let the idea go and just be happy that he finally found a team, unaware about the fact that someone was currently manipulating something in his mind. As after Team 7 was completely formed, we will end up seeing Naruto then leave the area, and when he does, we will see him then have a very serious look on his face as he will then smirk. But as he was smirking, this is when he would then stop, as this is when he then tells the individual who was hiding to then come out. As we will see that throughout the time that Naruto would actually end up leaving the exam area for where he actually did the bell test, someone had been following him. And this is when, revealing the person who followed Naruto as he steps into the light, it will be none other than a root Anbu. As Naruto will look at the root Anbu with a raised eyebrow, wondering exactly what it wants. With the root Anbu asking Naruto if he could please come with him, as after all, someone wants to meet him. And this made Naruto raise an eyebrow, as this is where we then do a time skip, as well as a change of scenes. We see Naruto once again, as by this point he had arrived at the root Anbu base, which was currently covered up and hidden away from Konoha since apparently they had been disbanded. And currently right now we will see as Naruto, after entering these chambers and seeing all the different areas and everything, memorizing all of them in his mind, we will then see him then arrive to meet the very person who invited him here, this being Danzo. Now when Danzo's here, he immediately cuts to the point, as after a few banter between the two of them, Danzo then asks Naruto if he would like to attain true power, more control, and overall if Naruto wants to truly assist his village. And Naruto, after hearing this, then smirks, as he would then state that he gladly wants to support his village in any way possible. And after hearing exactly what he wanted, this is when Danzo would then smirk, as he would then tell Naruto that he actually has a way to help out his village. As he asks Naruto if he wants to be trained by him, and if not him, if he wants to be trained by one of his root Anbu, telling Naruto that this will be a perfect opportunity for him to gain the necessary strength that he needs to protect his so dear village. And Naruto, after hearing that, would think about it for quite a while before suddenly agreeing. As just like that, Danzo would then tell Naruto to begin, but before, Naruto then asked if he could be trained by his root Anbu more precisely, since after all, he didn't want Danzo to be too, bothered by it. And Danzo begins thinking it over for quite a while, as he then remembers that he instilled his training into these Anbus. They know what they're doing. So with that, he decides to agree with it, telling Naruto, setting an appointment with him pretty much to where he comes here, he gets the training that he needs, and basically trying to make Naruto stronger. As after that, they would then both make this deal, as Naruto would then soon leave the area with an Anbu escorting him out. And while Naruto ends up leaving the base, this is when Danzo would then turn outside, as he ends up looking at a certain space in the wall, and when he does, he ends up smirking, as he felt as if finally things were going exactly as he thought according to his plan, as he didn't relish in the fact that Hiruzen had failed, and that this was his victory, as his plan was to pretty much just simply break Naruto down mentally before turning him into the ultimate weapon, and this time Hiruzen had nothing to stop it. But unaware to Danzo though was the fact that unfortunately he wasn't the one in control. As turning our attention to Naruto, we will see him by this point completely out of the root Anbu's secret location, and when he's out, this is when he would then turn to the Anbu before telling him to kneel, to which the Anbu would do so immediately, as he would then ask Naruto exactly what are his orders, to which Naruto then smirks. Cause you see, Naruto, when he was actually thinking over about everything, the truth of the matter was the simple fact that he wasn't the one who was being used by Danzo, and he doesn't need his pathetic training either. No, the only thing that Naruto needed from Danzo was his Anbu. As now that Naruto had Danzo's Anbu, this was just perfect, considering the fact that now he had a bunch of disposable tools that he could use whenever he wanted to help further his goal. As now with us the viewers understanding his intentions, this is when Naruto would then order the Anbu to just stand by for now and wait for his next orders. To which he would do so, as Naruto would also then order it that whenever Danzo had reportedly told the Anbu anything, that Anbu needs to immediately report back to Naruto when it comes to see him again. To which the Anbu would do so, as it would then head off, when Naruto would then continue on with his walk, already smiling about the fact that by now once again things are going exactly as according to plan. As we now do another time skip. Flashing forward to a total of 8 months later, we end up seeing Team 7 once again, as by this point they finally completed the necessary amount of D rank missions and were now eligible to go on a C rank. Now the first time Hiruzen found out about this, he tried using every excuse in the book as to why Team 7 couldn't go on a C rank mission, but over time he ran out of them. As after all, they now completely completed all the necessary amount of D rank mission, and not only that, but even Kakashi has told Hiruzen that they were ready. So with no other choice, Hiruzen has no choice but to send Team 7 out on the mission to the land of the waves. Which I do want to let you guys know on one thing, a very slight difference here, but a very important one. This being the fact that during the 8 months that went by, Team 7 did not just focus on team exercise and team building. Kakashi did actually get them somewhat prepared. This being the fact that he showed them proper shinobi attire, he gave them all the necessary equipment, and overall he also made sure to teach them just some basic jutsus. I'm not talking about something like, oh, fireball and stuff like that, but I'm saying basic jutsus where it could help them get out of situations, more than just a substitution jutsu. So due to that, Team 7 is actually a slightly bit stronger than they were in the main timeline, so due to that, they're actually much more ready for when they go out in the field. And that makes it even better since when Tazuna actually ends up seeing Team 7, he actually ends up approving of them, unlike where his canon counterpart was very unagreement when it came to them, calling them brats, especially Naruto. But now, thanks to them actually being more serious, Tazuna decides to put his trust into them and fully believes that they might have the skill required to actually keep him safe. So now with that taken care of, this is where we then see Team 7 then pack up, as they will all soon end up arriving at the gate for the mission. As after making sure that they have everything, this is where we then see Team 7 then go on their mission. As now with that, this is where we then do a little bit of a time skip. Changing scenes, we end up seeing Team 7 once again, as by this point we actually end up seeing them currently right now walking through the path of the land of the waves. Now on their way there, they did soon encounter the two demon brothers that try to catch them off guard. Luckily, however, both Sasuke and Naruto end up reacting, as both of them are able to take care of their respective opponents relatively easily. Now, another thing I'd like to let you guys know is the fact that Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry has been changed up completely, as in this timeline, Naruto shows no real rivalry when it came to Sasuke, but Sasuke saw a rival within Naruto, as instead of Naruto being the one to initiate the challenge, it'll be Sasuke to do so. As ever since what happened at the bell test, Sasuke has been trying to find out just how strong Naruto really is, but unfortunately, no matter how many times he has tried, Naruto never truly reveals how strong he is, as this was only one of the brief few instances that Naruto showed any type of physical combat prowess, and it seems as if he's equal on the level of Sasuke. As Sasuke continues glaring at Naruto, this is when Kakashi would then get up, as he of course faked being dead and everything, as he would then compliment the two, before suddenly he begins interrogating the two demon brothers. As the two demon brothers would end up fessing up everything about Gato and basically everything that's happening in the land of the waves, this causing all of Team 7 to realize that this mission was far above their pay grade. However, after a lot of begging from Tazuna, as well as after both Sasuke and Sakura end up vouching to complete this mission, this will end up causing Team 7 to then continue on with completing the mission at the land of the waves, pretty much things going pretty similar to the main timeline. As continuing on from that point, we end up seeing Team 7 once again, as so far things remain pretty similar to the main timeline as we find out more about the land of the waves, before suddenly they will then be stopped by none other than Zabuza and Momochi. Now when Zabuza ends up arriving, we see the encounter going pretty similar to how it does in the main timeline, with Kakashi eventually end up getting captured. Now when Kakashi ends up getting captured, it's up to Team 7 to save him, but this is where things would then divert from the canon. Cause while everyone else on the team was currently panicking about the fact that Kakashi was captured, we see that Naruto wasn't really paying attention to it, considering the fact that he wasn't really worried. No, instead Naruto was focusing on the fact that someone was currently watching him, and I mean him specifically, as he could already tell where Haku was hidden, and he could already tell that Haku wasn't paying attention to him, and was more importantly paying attention to Zabuza. No, he could tell that someone else was here, paying a very close attention to him. And this caused him to get extremely annoyed, as is when suddenly we would then see the entire mist around them then begin to kick up. as everyone inside the mist will end up getting engulfed in it, including Zabuza, who will be caught off guard by what was happening with his jutsu, considering the fact that he was not influencing it at all, as soon the entire mist completely covered over everyone as none of them were able to see it. Now this will cause Zabuza to immediately tense up, considering the fact that he can't get a good visual on where Kakashi's students were, and to make it even worse is the fact that he can't move, considering the fact that the water prism jutsu, he needs to stay there in place in order for it to really remain active. So right now he was in a pretty bad situation. As turning to both Sasuke and Sakura, we see the both of them currently right now forming a plan, as now with this mist currently right now seemingly working against Zabuza as well, they might have an opportunity here. But right now, we're not focusing on that, we're focusing on Naruto, as this is where we then change our POV. Currently right now, we end up seeing a very specific individuals, as they'll be trying to look at the scene from a distance, this being none other than White Zetsu. We will see him currently deeming the same Akatsuki role, as he was making sure to keep tabs on what was happening with the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki. But during the time of doing this, he would then see the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki then encounter Zabuza Momochi, as he already knows that of course the Nine-Tails would be there to protect its host, so he wasn't too worried about it. But still nonetheless, it made a very entertaining show as he decides to see what was going to happen. But that's when the mist would then kick up, causing him to lose his visual and causing him to be quite annoyed. As he begins to use his chakra to try to sense exactly what was going on, this is when suddenly he ends up stopping, as he ends up feeling himself being impaled by something. As suddenly looking down, this is when we would then see White Zetsu then be stabbed by a katana, as he ends up actually being caught off guard by it before suddenly turning around and asking how. As we end up seeing currently right now standing there with a cold expression will be none other than Naruto, as he'll be telling White Zetsu that answering questions like that was beneath him. As after that, we will then see White Zetsu then try to escape out of it, but when he does, he realized that it was pointless, as for some odd reason he had completely lost control of his body. Now as he tries to think of exactly how to get out of the situation, it was already too late, as by now he already been caught up in Naruto's hypnosis, as he had been caught by Kyoka Sugetsu and there was no escaping out of it, unless of course Naruto wanted him to be released. Now while under Kyoka Sugetsu, this is where Naruto then begins to analyze everything of White Zetsu, finding out as much information about him. Now, of course, finding out all this stuff about White Zetsu was surprising, but the one thing that shocks him the most is that he ends up becoming aware of Kaguya and the Otsutsuskis, and basically everything that happened with Hagoromo, and basically what exactly is White Zetsu's intentions. As after finding out about all this is where we then see Naruto for the first time since he's been in this world actually show a true expression of anger, as he ends up cursing at the top of his lungs, as he ends up glaring angrily at White Zetsu as he couldn't believe it. Now do remember that by this point, all of Naruto's plans have been going exactly as he intended, as after all in this world, things were way less complicated compared to the world of Bleach. So due to that, he had a much easier time when it comes to planning out exactly how he was going to become the deity of this world. And so far, he had no trouble at all when going about it. He was building resources, he was growing in power, things were going exactly as he intended it to do. But now he finds out that even in this world, there's some higher being out there. A higher being that did not deserve that title at all. This rabbit goddess, Kaguya, she was a joke, at least in his eyes. As based on all the memories that he gotten from White Zetsu, he could immediately tell that this rabbit goddess was nowhere near his intelligence, nowhere near as powerful as him, and overall someone who was completely inferior to him. Yet somehow, someway, this lady was still in a higher plane of existence than he was currently at the moment, something that he felt true disgust at of just thinking about it. As we end up turning to Naruto once again to see him actually shaking in pure anger as he'll be taking deep breaths before finally calming down. He ends up taking a good look at White Zetsu before finally using Kyoka Sugetsu once again, as this time he made sure to kind of edit and tweaked out Kaguya's little puppet, as from now on, instead of doing her bidding, he was going to do his. As after pretty much editing basically all of White Zetsu's origin, we will then see him then awaken once again as he immediately begins to bow down in front of Naruto. As currently right now, in White Zetsu's mind, Naruto had been the one to completely replace Kaguya, as basically Naruto was the one who created White Zetsu, or at least that's what White Zetsu thinks for now. As after this is when Naruto would then give White Zetsu a pretty simple order, pretty much to keep him informed about everything that's going to occur for the next few moments, as he now also knows about the Akatsuki since, after all, he took all of Waizetsu's memories. As Waizetsu understands these orders, he would then nod back, as Naruto would then tell him to also return back whenever he calls for him, to which he would do so. As after now all these were established, this is when Naruto would then send Waizetsu away, as he begins walking back to his team. As by this point, Team 7 had actually succeeded when it came to rescuing Kakashi. As Naruto would continue walking, this is when suddenly he ends up actually having a monologue as he begins thinking over on everything. As now with his thoughts filled to the brain with the Akatsuki and more importantly Kaguya as well as the Otsutsuki, we would then see Naruto's appearance then darken and more precisely his eyes as he ends up walking with a much more darker look on his face. As by now his intentions were still clear, but it seems as if he's gonna have to go a little bit further when it came to his plans. As after all, he thought that being in this world things would be much easier, things would go by much more smoothly. But he just simply could not handle the fact that there was another being up there that was looking down upon him. Even if she is sealed away, it doesn't matter. Not only that, but there's also Hagoromo as well. As just thinking of these guys and thinking of the Ototsukis as well made Naruto literally cringe in disgust. But it was alright, as after all, things were still going to go exactly as he intended. And more importantly, he'll be the one to stand above all by the end of it. As now with these thoughts plaguing Naruto's mind, this is where we then do a time skip as well as a change of scenes. Turning back to Team 7, we end up seeing that both Sasuke and Sakura were able to make a plan pretty similar to what Naruto did in the main timeline, as they were actually able to rescue Kakashi. Now Kakashi was able to finally actually go 1v1 against Zabuza and was actually able to win against him, just like he does in the main timeline. But this is where things was unchanged. As Zabuza will be there captured and currently unable to move, he'll be currently right now near death's door as he looks at Kakashi one last time. As Kakashi tries to tell Zabuza that this will be the end for him, only for everyone to then sense someone approaching, someone very powerful. Now when Zabuza ends up sensing this person approaching, at first he thinks that it's Haku, but by the time the person ends up being revealed, he will then be left in shock. As currently right now, we then see exiting out of the forest will be none other than Naruto, as we end up seeing him send his team a mature smell, showing that he was unscathed and everything, but the real surprising thing about it all was the fact that he was currently right now dragging none other than Haku, as Naruto begins to make up a entirely fabricated story, basically trying to explain that during the time when the mist completely covered them, that he had encountered Haku and spent the entire time fighting him, when really that wasn't what happened. As basically Naruto throughout the time of him just trying to return back to his team and was still thinking of Kage and everything, Haku actually spotted Naruto. And mind you, Naruto was still in a very bad mood, so when Haku tried to attack him, Naruto didn't even look as he was able to just completely cut him down with Kyoike Sugetsu. As after all, Haku stood no chance for a man who was literally a threat to the 13 court squads, alright? This man was a threat to the entire Soul Society. And there's no way Haku was going to be able to do anything to him. As after taking down Haku, Naruto now had the perfect excuse as to why exactly he's been gone for so long. So here he is now. As after seeing Haku there completely just defeated and now gone from this world, Zabuza realized that this really was the end of the line. As the one thing he can do is just simply close his eyes and resign his fate, as he just tells Kakashi to end it. To which Kakashi would then look at him with the Sharingan one last time before doing just that, as this will be the end for both Zabuza as well as Haku. As after that, this is where we then continue on with the rest of the Land of the Waves, as now with both Haku as well as Zabuza not taken care of, Team 7 will then complete the rest of the Land of the Waves, with Tazuna returning back to his family and Tazuna eventually building the bridge as we end up seeing Gato and this man trying to pull up. Now, he ends up, of course, getting taken down by Team 7, and after that, Team 7 decides to leave him to the rest of the villagers, since it was fitting for them to punish him for everything that he had done to them. And another interesting thing to know is the fact that throughout this time, Naruto would be highly respected, as you see, throughout the time of this Land of the Wave incident going on, Naruto actually was able to retrieve all the fortune that Gato had left behind after he passed away. As after acquiring all of Gato's fortune, he gave some of it to the Land of the Waves, causing many of them to really begin looking at Naruto as if he was a saint. And not only that, but also causing Team 7 to grow even more respect towards Naruto, considering the fact that the man was doing something that most wouldn't even think twice of doing. As after that, Team 7 ended up leaving the Land of the Waves, with the bridge actually being called the Great Naruto Bridge, mostly because of the fact that Naruto actually gave the fortune to the Land of the Waves. So basically that was their honor and tribute to him. As Naruto would end up walking out of there, but he He ends up walking out of there with a large amount of thoughts clouding his mind, and not only that, but he realized that he's going to have to begin accelerating a little bit more of his plans. As now with that being said, this will be the end to the Land of the Waves, as this is where we now continue on with the story, as we now do another time skip. Turning to when the team ends up arriving at the Hidden Leaf Village, we end up seeing Naruto as well as the rest of his team then go their separate ways after giving a report to Hiruzen. Now Hiruzen was very suspicious about the events that occurred in the Land of the Waves, mostly because of the fact that he didn't hear too much input from Naruto. Not only that, but not many of them seen Naruto in action, besides when it came to facing off against Gato's men. So due to that, once again, Hiruzen has too many suspicions of Naruto, but decides to keep at the back of his head for now, since he can't take too much action. As after that, we then skim forward a little bit more with the story, as we end up seeing Team 7 then get informed about the tuning exams, and be given a little bit more time than they did in the main timeline to prepare for it, mostly because of the fact that they completed the Land of the Waves much sooner than they did in the main timeline, as this will give every member of Team 7 an opportunity to do what they wanted. As we see that both Sasuke and Sakura are actually training and preparing for it, we see Naruto doing things differently. As throughout these days preparing for the tuning exams, we see that Naruto was trying to get updated on everything, as basically he had pretty much 3 different sources giving him a variety amount of different information. He had White Zetsu, which was informing Naruto about the Akatsuki. He also had Anbus that Hiruzen had under his control, as after all, he lived near the Anbu base. You're telling me that he couldn't just manipulate them to do what he wanted? Come on now. As he had Anbus informing him about everything that Hiruzen was up to, and he also had Root Anbus informing him about everything that Danzo was up to. As basically he has an entire group of information gatherers that informed him about his 3 biggest annoyances, this being Danzo, Hiruzen, and the Akatsuki. But currently right now he was making plans for every last 3 of them, considering the fact that now he can no longer deal with their annoyance anymore. Because after all, things were now way bigger than them, as he still had to take care of Kaguya, as well as the rest of the Otsutsuskis. As now with that, this is where we then once again skim forward, as we now cut to when it's finally time for the shooting exams. We end up seeing Team 7 go through pretty similar events as they do in the main timeline. We see Sasuke then get beat up by Rock Lee as Rock Lee challenges Sasuke, and even though Sasuke is definitely pushing himself much more than he did in the main timeline, unfortunately he still loses. And then after that, we then see them take the first portion of the tuning exams, to which they all pass relatively easily, as after that it was now finally time for the Forest of Death. As we see all of Team 7 currently right now gather up, as each one of them would be just given their scroll, as they would then be headed off into the forest, we will see them at first then encounter a team as soon as they get there, as they were trying to sneak attack them as they were just walking through the forest. As they first started out by trying to attack Sakura, but unfortunately Sasuke and Naruto intercepted them. As after a quick battle between the 2 teams, we end up seeing that Team 7 are the winners, as we also find out that that team actually ended up having the exact scroll that Team 7 needed to pass. As now they were basically done with the Forest of Death, right? Well, they thought wrong. As throughout the time of trying to leave, this is when suddenly they would then all be hit by a ginormous wind blast, as we see every last one of them dodge out the way, luckily in time. But still, the damage it caused was shocking. As this is when we would then see Team 7 then encounter Orochimaru. Now this is where Orochimaru would then go on his monologue, surprised that all of the team actually was able to dodge all of that, as this is when he then begins hunting down Team 7. But you see, unfortunately for Orochimaru, Naruto was already thinking ahead. And not only that, but Naruto saw this as a great opportunity here, as after all he realized that he can take care of 2 of his problems right here right now, and the craziest part about it was the fact that he didn't even need to get his hands dirty. As after actually running around and avoiding Orochimaru, this is when Orochimaru then loses track of Team 7, as he had been able to get away. As he'll be confused as he tries to use his chakra to sense exactly where they are, he'll be surprised by the fact that he could literally sense nothing. It was almost as if they disappeared. At first he thought that maybe all of them had learned the body flicker, but as he was thinking this though, this is when suddenly he would then sense someone, as he ends up looking around before finally spotting the person, as he sees Naruto currently right now hiding up above a tree. Now when he sees this, he laughs as he begins to think that both Sasuke and Sakura had left Naruto behind. As he would then immediately blitz off and appear right in front of Naruto, who looks on in shock before Orochimaru would then punch him in the face, causing him to be sent flying. As we will see Naruto then be sent flying out of the tree and crashing to the ground, Orochimaru would then approach him as he thinks that the kid may actually be dead, as he actually ends up looking at Naruto with disappointment. As we see Orochimaru then immediately lose interest as he prepares to leave, but just as he turns around to leave, he would then be surprised to see none other than Naruto just casually standing there with a smirk on his face. Now Orochimaru will be surprised as he ends up looking back at the other Naruto that was on the ground, and he's surprised when he still sees him there. As he tries to use chakra to see if, maybe it was just a shadow clone or something like that, he is surprised to see that no, it wasn't, as he'll be so caught off guard by it. He'll be looking back and forth before asking how, as this is when Naruto then smirks before suddenly disappearing, as Orochimaru would then be caught off guard as he would then be stabbed in the stomach. He ends up looking down in complete shock before suddenly getting slammed into a tree, as Naruto would then twist a blade, causing him to be, screaming out in pain. Now Orochimaru, tries to swing back at Naruto, tries to hit him, but Naruto was able to dodge out the way, as after getting some distance away from Orochimaru, he just casually stands there with a smirk on his face, stating that was a little bit of revenge for earlier. Now Orochimaru was so confused by this situation, but still nonetheless, he began trying to fight Naruto. But to Orochimaru's surprise, as he would begin fighting Naruto, he would actually feel himself being completely overwhelmed by him, as Naruto was casually, all the hits that Orochimaru would throw at him, all the jutsu, and basically everything that Orochimaru could possibly throw at Naruto was just casually walking through it, treating it as nothing more but a nuisance. As after walking through all these attacks, this is when Naruto would then call out Orochimaru, stating that with this level of power, that he will fail horribly when it comes to trying to take down the Hidden Leaf Village. Now this causes Orochimaru to stop, as he would then ask Naruto exactly how does he know this, as this is when Naruto would then tell Orochimaru to get rid of the disguise. Now Orochimaru would be surprised and caught off guard, but by this point he's already going with the mood swings at this very moment, as he decides to reveal that he was actually Orochimaru since he was still in his disguise. As after that, this is when we would then see both Naruto and Orochimaru then have a discussion, with Orochimaru asking Naruto exactly how he was doing all this, and more importantly, how was Naruto able to just simply be unfazed by all his attacks, with Naruto just telling him the one and most brutal truth that Orochimaru could ever hear, that he was weak. And he tells it straight to Orochimaru's face as well, with no hesitation, no fear. And Orochimaru hearing this would be pissed off, as he once again tries to throw an attack at Naruto, but this is when he would then be hit by an intense pressure, causing him to collapse down to his knees, as he will be paling even more than he usually is. As he continues panting as he believes that he's about to die right now, this is when Naruto will then speak up, telling Orochimaru once again that he's weak, and that he's beneath him, and that the only reason why Orochimaru was still alive was because of the fact that he simply saw some use in him. As after hearing this, Orochimaru will look at Naruto with a ginormous amount of fear, but also interested as to why exactly Naruto even kept him alive. As this is when Naruto would then begin to talk things over with Orochimaru, as basically Naruto begins to inform Orochimaru about his plans. Not the ones about himself, but mostly the ones that he wants to take care of right now. As Naruto ends up informing Orochimaru that he wants to use him in order to take care of his 3 annoyances, this being Hiruzen, Danzo, as well as the Akatsuki. As he ends up informing all this to Orochimaru, who looks at Naruto surprised but also confused, as he then asks Naruto why exactly does he want his help when Naruto seems to be more than strong enough to take care of them all by himself. With Naruto smirking in response, as he would then ask Orochimaru what would be the point in him dirtying his hands with something so beneath him, as it will be better off if someone else does it for him. As Orochimaru would hear this in just complete shock by just how narcissistic Naruto really was, as this is when he realized that this was a man that was filled with pride, which was something that was really good considering the fact that Orochimaru knew exactly how to play with someone's pride. But unfortunately for Orochimaru, right before he begins to open his mouth and begins to try to play at Naruto's pride, this is when Naruto would then cut him off short by pretty much telling Orochimaru that if he does this for him, he will grant Orochimaru his one and true wish. And hearing this will make Orochimaru stop for a moment, as he would then look at Naruto with a skeptical gaze, as he would then ask Naruto what exactly is his wish, with Naruto looking at Orochimaru before simply stating that he knows that his wish is to be immortal. And this will cause Orochimaru to look at him in surprise, as this is when he then tells Naruto that he must be lying, considering the fact that there's no way that Naruto was able to crack immortality before he had done it. He, Orochimaru, someone who has lived for so many years now. But this is when Naruto would then begin to release a generous amount of pressure once again, causing Orochimaru to once again just simply bow his head down to the ground. As this is when Orochimaru would then be told by Naruto that he has more than enough power as well as intelligence to make Orochimaru's dream come true, even though it was a very pathetic dream in Naruto's eyes. As after hearing this, Orochimaru then immediately begins to actually believe that maybe, just maybe, Naruto could actually fulfill his wish. As he ends up looking at Naruto with a raised eyebrow, this is when he would then agree to the terms, to which Naruto would nod his head. As just like that, they would then have a deal. As we now do another time skip. After that, we end up seeing Naruto, as by this point, throughout the entire time that both Sasuke, Sakura have been escaping from Orochimaru, Naruto had been supposedly with them throughout this entire time. But unaware to them was the fact that Naruto was not really there, as instead all they were looking at was nothing more but an illusion that was formed from the mind, as Naruto had hypnotized them right before he went to speak with Orochimaru. As now that Naruto had finally returned back to the team, we see him swapping places with the illusion, as now with that being taken care of, we would then see the rest of Team 7 then complete the rest of the Forest of Death, since in this timeline they don't really encounter too many threats, except for that Sound team. But you see, the thing is, with Sasuke being completely fine and everything, like they didn't fight Orochimaru at all, well, except for Naruto. So that means that Team 7 is still at 100%, and not only that, but Naruto in this timeline is obviously way more powerful than his canon counterpart, so due to that, they would have no problem when it came to taking down a Sound team. And after that, they'll soon also encounter Kabuto, to which Naruto does let Kabuto know about the deal that happened. As Kabuto, after finding out that Naruto is working with him and everything, decides to stop pushing Team 7 over the limits and everything, and stop falling into very obvious traps. As after that, Team 7 ended up getting past the Forest of Death, as this is where we now enter the preliminaries. Now changing to the preliminaries, we see not many events actually end up changing from the main timeline here, since all the matches are still the same. I'll say for the main and biggest differences here, I'll say the first one being the fact that Sakura actually ends up winning her fight against Ino, as she's actually able to do more than just a simple draw. And not only that, but I also want to point out another thing is the fact that when it came to Hinata and Neji's fight, Neji was he took it much more easier on Hinata. And the main reason for this one is because of the fact that, do remember that I mentioned earlier, throughout Naruto's childhood, he had made a ginormous impact on the village entirely, since many people are much nicer and much more respectful towards him than they were in the main timeline. And one of the biggest reasons for this was because of the fact that he saved Hinata. And because he saved Hinata, that means that Neji's father does not have to do a mindless sacrifice, since Naruto had prevented the Kumo Shinobi from actually getting Hinata. And not only that, but also preventing Hinata's father from actually trying to kill him. So due to that, Hinata and Neji's fight would be much more safer for Hinata. She still ends up losing this one, unfortunately, but still nonetheless, we see that the two of them are actually having a pretty close bond with each other, seeing each other as siblings, and not only that, but they're extremely grateful towards Naruto, speaking of him in a very respectful tone. And I'm not talking about just Neji and Hinata, but also the rest of the Hyuga clan as well. As now with those few changes out of the way, we see the rest of the matches play out pretty similarly, as basically the ones who win in the main timeline win in this one. As now with this completed, this is where we then get the 1 month training. Now during this time, we actually see Naruto doing multiple things that made Hiruzen, who has been trying to spy on him for the entirety of the 1 month, go through a generous amount of stress. And the main thing that Naruto was doing that caused Hiruzen a generous amount of stress was simply nothing, as literally the boy had been doing nothing throughout the entire time of the 1 month training. No training, no nothing. In fact, all he did was continue building up his reputation around the entire village, as many people continue to like Naruto, as his likability and popularity continues skyrocketing. Not only that, but pretty much even the Konoha 12 began to actually warm up to Naruto as well, including Sasuke, as Naruto actually helped Sasuke when it came to his own training. Basically, Naruto was being seen as this older brother type figure around the entire village, as whenever it came to the Konoha 12, he would always be there to give them advice or just simply listen to them. But that's the thing that unnerves Hiruzen. He can see things that they don't. He could hear Naruto's fake laughter, the fake sadness whenever he would hear like anything that they were dealing with. And basically he's able to understand that everything that Naruto was doing was just a facade. But unfortunately, no one really saw it that way, as this made Hiruzen seem as if he was going hysterical, as this would cause him to even lose a little bit of respect from the Anbus themselves that were looking after him. As throughout this entire time, Hiruzen has been going through a enormous amount of stress, mostly because of the fact that he believes that Orochimaru is back in the village. Not only that, but he also has to deal with Naruto as well, as he has no idea what the boy is planning. And well, speaking of Naruto, throughout this time we see that Naruto had mostly spent his entire time just talking with the Konoha 12 and helping around. as so far it seems as if he has done no training at all. But that really was just to throw Hiruzen off guard, as Naruto throughout this time will be heavy on his schedules when it came to his plans, as he will be making sure to keep an eye on Orochimaru, making sure he followed his deal. Not only that, but he was also working on a secret project. The project of recreating the Hokugyu. That's right, you heard it. As Naruto throughout this time is slowly but surely has been building up the Hokugyu. As you see, ever since finding out about Kaguya and the Otsutsuki's from the Land of the Waves, Naruto thought it would be fitting for him to just simply deal with the problem the most efficient way possible, and what better way than just simply building up the Hokugyu, as he still remembered the power of the Hokugyu and what exactly it gave him. But at the same time, he also knew that in this world, there was no Urahara or Ichigo Kurosaki, as he didn't believe that there was anyone in this world that could even weaken him. Not only that, but he also didn't believe that there was anyone in this world who had an equal level of intelligence towards him, or at least, slightly level intelligence towards him. As due to this would cause him to fully believe that even without the Hokugyu, he could still end up literally taking down the Otsutsuki's. But still, he wanted to take them down in the most simple way possible and really show them their place, the place that was beneath him. As after these revelations, we will see him continue building up the Hokugyu, and in this timeline, he actually finds out how to build it much quicker than even in the world of Bleach. Cause you see, instead of using a generous amount of souls like he did in his old life, in this one, what he could actually do was substitute the souls for a much more powerful energy source, this being the Tailed Beast. As during the time of building up the Hokugyu, we actually see Naruto then decide to actually even tap into the Nine Tails' power, to which Kurama would give him it, thinking that Naruto was gonna fall for it, of course. But the thing is, he had no idea exactly how smart Naruto had become, as Naruto had easily just fed the energy to the Hokugyu, and it was able to absorb it immediately. And not only that, but it began to work in much quicker succession. So due to that, without any hesitation, Naruto decided to do the one logical thing possible: break the seal and give the Nine Tails to the Hokugyu, using it as an energy source. Now, of course, when Naruto tried to go through with it, he was met with a couple of difficulties, mainly being Minato, as well as the seal acting weirdly to his Zanpakuto, but at the end of the day, the results were still the same. He broke through the seal, and he used Kurama as an energy source for the Hokugyu. But even with Kurama, it just simply wasn't completed just yet. But seeing how fast it was working with just one tailed beast, this is when Naruto then vowed to actually capture all of them, to use them for the Hokugyu. But for that, he needed to eliminate the tailed beast, which is where the Akatsuki and in addition Orochimaru comes in, as basically he was going to be using both groups to his advantage. As now that I informed you all with that, this is where we now turn to the Chunin exams. Now during the time of the Chunin exams, we see things pretty much play out pretty similar to the main timeline. Naruto versus Neji, with Neji of course losing to Naruto, but both of them showing a sign of respectful sportsmanship, causing many people in the stands to actually cheer in excitement. As after that, the rest of the matches will play out pretty similarly, until eventually they will then all see feathers falling from the sky, as it was the beginning of the Konoha Crush, with chaos erupting all around Konoha, with Konoha Shinobi trying their best to regain control. But unfortunately, with the number of sound and also sand shinobis going around the entire area, it was seeming to be a very tough battle and also being at a standstill, as Naruto throughout this time was actually playing a very vital role, or at least in the eyes of the people. As in the eyes of everyone, they will see Naruto doing a total of 3 things. Number 1 being the fact that Naruto had supposedly made shadow clones, as he had been able to send out 3 shadow clones, 2 of them to assist when it came to escorting the villagers to safety, while the other one went after Gaara along with Sasuke. And the last one, this being the original Naruto, supposedly went off to help out Hiruzen, as right before Hiruzen had been completely sealed away thanks to the power of the Sound 4, we will see Naruto actually enter just mid-seconds away before the barrier had closed, causing everyone to just look at it in shock. Now, they were cursed at the fact that Naruto was able to enter, but at the end of the day, they think of him as nothing more but a kid, thinking that he can't really do anything, right? As this is where we now turn to inside the barrier. Entering inside the barrier, we see Hiruzen at a standstill right now, as currently right now, he had saw Naruto enter inside the barrier and had ordered him to stay back. Although he didn't feel exactly safe around the child, that didn't mean that he wanted Naruto to be killed off right now, especially when he's facing off against a much bigger threat here, obviously. Now, the fight between Hiruzen and Orochimaru go pretty similar to the main timeline, but you see, just as Hiruzen was in the process of trying to steal Orochimaru away, of course trying to use the Reaper Death Seal, He would then be surprised as suddenly all he would hear is a sound of glass shattering, as in the next few moments as Hiruzen was trying to steal away Orochimaru's arms, he ended up realizing that he missed the target completely, and that Orochimaru was a-okay standing right next to Naruto. He looks on in surprise before his old body then collapses down to the ground, mostly due to the fact that Orochimaru's sword had finally taken effect, and was slowly chipping away at Hiruzen's life. As Hiruzen glares angrily at the ground, this is when he would then ask Naruto why. Why did he betray the hidden leaf? As Naruto looks at Hiruzen, trying to seem innocent, before suddenly the entire facade just slips off. As Naruto shows his true intentions as well as his nature, as he would then coldly walk towards Hiruzen as he was dying on the ground, before asking Hiruzen, when had he ever aligned himself with this village? As after saying these words, Hiruzen will be hit with the shock of his lifetime, as he continues staring at Naruto. As this is where we would then see Naruto then begin to go on a whole monologue, basically explaining to Hiruzen exactly everything he'd done from the very beginning to the end, saying to Hiruzen how basically throughout this entire time he was annoyed with Hiruzen, stating how if he just simply minded his own business, if he simply did not try to control his actions, then maybe he could have lived longer. But no, it seems as if Hiruzen just simply did not value his life enough. But it made sense. After all, this was kind of ironic. After all, Hiruzen was born into a battlefield and now he died on the battlefield. As this is when Naruto would then look at Hiruzen before telling him to make sure to engrave it into his mind, as he wants Hiruzen to always remember his two biggest mistakes. One being of course the creation of Orochimaru, and the other one being the fact that he just simply annoyed Naruto, as he did this all because Hiruzen was annoying. As Hiruzen will look at Naruto in complete shock, right before he dies, he would then ask him what did he plan to do with this village. And this is when he will be once again shocked by just how uncaring and cold Naruto was. As Naruto basically says that whatever happens to this village, it doesn't involve him. Heck, the entire village can burn to the ground and he wouldn't even bat an eye. Basically, Naruto was telling Hiruzen that this entire village, the village that his own family sacrificed themselves in order to keep alive and standing, was basically nothing to him. And hearing that caused Hiruzen to gather the last bit of strength that he had left, as he ends up striking Naruto in the back of his neck with a killing blow, as he glares angrily at Naruto as he begins to collapse down to the ground, no longer able to move. But as he continues to be on the ground, he will look at Naruto one last time, and when he does, he'll be surprised, as even though Naruto's neck looks seemingly broken by this point, as Naruto's head was bended in a very, very wrong manner, Naruto just calmly ends up just snapping his neck back in as he looks at Hiruzen with a smirk. As Hiruzen literally looks at Naruto and all he can see is the Shikigami, as he can only think of death when he looks at him. As those will be the final sights that Hiruzen would see right before finally passing away. As now, the third Hokage had passed away. And along with him was supposedly Naruto Uzumaki. As is when suddenly we would then see the Naruto that had snapped back his neck in place, then suddenly just snap it right back out of it, as his body would then collapse down to the ground, as Hiruzen looks at the scene in complete shock, unable to believe what he had just been watching this entire time, until suddenly he would then hear the words of Naruto then speak up. He ends up jumping a little bit as he ends up turning around to see none other than Naruto, completely fine, as he'll be staring down at his own dead body, and also the body of Hiruzen with an emotionless look, as he tells Orochimaru that it was time for them to leave. And Orochimaru looking at this would ask Naruto what exactly he intended, with Naruto calmly telling him that there's still more things to do. Now, not getting the answer that he wanted, Orochimaru was actually pretty upset about this, as he tells Naruto that he still has the opportunity here to destroy Konoha, but right before he was trying to go on a whole spiel as to why they should stay, Naruto stares him down and begins to release pressure, reminding Orochimaru once again exactly who he was talking to, causing him to be quiet, as is when Naruto once again tells him that they still have more things to do. As Orochimaru after hearing this would just calmly nod his head, as this is when he would then alert the Sound 4 that it was time for them to go. As the Sound 4 would then disassemble the barrier, we would then see all of them end up leaving, including Naruto, as this is when the Umbus would then end up arriving at the scene, and what they see ends up shocking them, as they see Naruto and Hiruzen had fully passed away during the fight against Orochimaru, unable to believe just how powerful the Snake Sannin had grown. As now with this being done, this is where we then get the end of the Konoha Crush, as luckily the Leaf Shinobis are able to stand tall and proud, and are actually able to defeat the other Shinobis eventually. As now with the Konoha Crush coming to an end, this is when we would actually end up seeing the entire village end up finding out about the knowledge that the third Hokage and also Naruto, the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki, had passed away. Now this will actually be a very dark day for the Hidden Leaf Village, as they are actually now heavily weakened. They lost, of course, Hiruzen, and they also lost Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki, but also someone who had a ginormous amount of potential for a shinobi. So after taking these heavy blows, this was of course a lot for them to take in, as it was a very dark time for the next following days that went by for the Hidden Leaf Village. As this is where we now do another time skip. Now during this time, the Hidden Leaf Village was trying their very best in order to make sure to get back on their feet. They even called up Jiraiya, the legendary Sannin, to which Jiraiya, when he found out about the news, he was devastated to say the least, and he wasn't even acting like himself, as he was being serious 100% of the time. And not only that, but when he actually ends up being informed about the fact they need a new Hokage and they offered him the position, he was extremely against it. But this is when they actually end up finding out that he has a deadline since if he doesn't become the Hokage, Danzo is going to become the Hokage. So due to this, with no other choice, Jiraiya has to still go on a mission to go after Tsunade, to which that's not going to go as intended. As throughout this time, we actually see Danzo thriving. This man was living it up, and the main reason why is because of the fact that Hiruzen, one of his biggest headaches, had finally been taken care of. Although the one thing he was very disappointed of is the fact that Naruto was gone, as he thought with all the rude training, Naruto would be able to stand up to someone like Orochimaru. But it seems as if that wasn't the case. But unfortunately, even with these losses, Danzo could still see himself making the most of it, as he fully believed that he can get the village back on his feet, and all he was doing right now was just biding his time and waiting for it all to fall into place. But word to him was the fact that these thoughts of his, these thoughts of, taking over the village and everything, they were all going to be cut short very soon. As on a certain night, we see Danzo just calmly sitting at his desk, as currently right now it was raining, as he'll be looking just completely puzzled by it, considering the fact that that was usually meaning of a bad omen. But he decided to shrug it off, mostly because of the fact that at the end of the day, anything that may approach him would fail miserably when it came to killing him. As we see Danzo just calmly sit there in his room, this is when suddenly one of his Root Anbu members will then walk in, as he then tells them to give him a report. Now the Anbu member says nothing more but does just that, as begins speaking in a very monotone-like voice, as Danzo will listen to all of it with a smile on his face, just really feeling the relaxation of knowing that everything was going according to plan. But as he was enjoying himself though, this is when suddenly he would then open his eyes to be surprised to see none other than Naruto just casually sitting on his desk, sitting right in front of Danzo. Danzo's eyes will be going completely wide open as he ends up immediately jumping away from Naruto and looking at him with complete shock, as Naruto by this point had completely lost his old demeanor, this being his usual kind face along with a smile, as now Naruto threw that completely away as he would then look at Danzo with a sophisticated and cruel smirk. As he would then ask Danzo how has he been throughout these times, with Danzo just completely surprised and thrown off guard by the fact that Naruto was here. But sensing by how Naruto was approaching him and everything, Danzo's senses were going haywire as he fully believed that Naruto was trying to attack him, as this is when he would then begin to order his Anbu pretty much to just simply take care of him. But as Danzo would of course continue speaking to Naruto and giving them secret codes, he sees that none of his Anbus were listening to him. This would cause him to get annoyed as he tries once again to do so, but as he was trying to do so, he would then be surprised to see that as he tried to send a signal with his broken arm, or his supposed broken arm, he ended up looking to see that his arm was now gone, as he ends up seeing it on the ground as he looks at it in complete shock, as he didn't know when or how this even happened. As he looks at his hand on the ground before looking at Naruto, only to see that by now Naruto is face to face with him, as he ends up backing up in actual fright considering the fact that he couldn't even sense anything from the child, as truly Naruto felt like death at this very moment, as this is when Naruto then begins to pretty much discuss how annoying Danzo was, basically pointing out about all his flaws, telling Danzo about how pathetic and how weak his dream was of ruling over this pathetic village, and basically just insulting everything of Danzo's being. The things that made Danzo Danzo, Naruto will be insulting him over it. And hearing this made Danzo extremely pissed off, as he was feeling extremely mad over the fact that he had lost his arm, as he begins throwing a ginormous amount of curses at Naruto, cursing his very existence before telling Naruto that he wouldn't have amounted to anything if it wasn't for Danzo. And Naruto, after hearing this, says nothing more as he just smirks at Danzo before calmly taking a seat in his own chair, as Danzo will be looking at Naruto pissed off over the fact that he was acting so smug, acting as if he was the hopeless one in this situation, as he ends up actually activating the seal as he tells Naruto to go to hell. But as he was trying to do this though, this is when suddenly he will then be cut off by his very own root Anbu. As he ends up looking at the blade that was stabbed, he looks at his Anbu in shock before suddenly multiple swarms of them begin to rush at him one by one. As he ends up looking at the scene in shock, unable to believe that his own experiments and his own training methods were now being used against him. As this is when he then looks at Naruto, and to his surprise, he sees Naruto looking at the entire scene before him, as he will look at it all with a cold yet sophisticated smile on his face, acting as if nothing happened. As Danzo will continue looking at the scene in complete shock, as he then curses out Naruto one last time before activating the bomb, as even after death he still wanted to just pretty much curse out Naruto. As this is when we will then see the entire Roots Anbu base go into an explosion, as basically Danzo decided to take out all of them, wiping out his old research and everything, thinking that anyone that got in the chance of actually killing him would go down with him as well. But unaware to Danzo was the simple fact that Naruto had already pillaged him of everything he had. His research, his resources, all of Danzo's connections, basically everything that Danzo had that made him so powerful, Naruto had pillaged, stolen away, and pretty much just took away everything that made Danzo who he was. As we will see Danzo blow up all for nothing. As when we now turn to Danzo's base, we will see it completely destroyed, but we will be surprised to see that Naruto will be walking out of the rubble unscathed, as there was not a scratch or even a speck of dirt on him or even his clothing. As we see Naruto now walking out of there completely fine, this is when a root Anbu would then appear right beside him, as they would then ask Naruto for what exactly is his next orders. And this is when Naruto would then ask them if they've been keeping him updated on his certain subjects, to which they end up telling him yes. As you see, Naruto, his main purpose for using the root Anbu, besides, using them to just rob from Danzo, the other reason was to also keep tabs on all the tailed beasts. Basically, Naruto had a bunch of different root Anbus around different areas, keeping tabs on the tailed beasts, and pretty much being there long term in order to let him know exactly what they're doing, so that way he knows exactly where their locations are. And while yes, this task can be actually used for White Zetsu, since Naruto does have White Zetsu under his control, he decides to save White Zetsu for later since he has another important job for him. As nonetheless, now that Naruto had taken care of two of his biggest annoyances, all that was left was the Akatsuki, as he ends up looking up into the sky, as this is where we now do a time skip. Flashing forward to the next 2 years, we end up seeing multiple things go differently compared to how it was in the main timeline. Number one being the fact that Konoha did not recover as good as it was in the main timeline. Since remember, Konoha had lost a significant amount of manpower after the ends of Danzo, Hiruzen, and supposedly Naruto. As without those three, that caused a heavy blow to Konoha's, when it came to their resources, their manpower, and basically just their overall position as a village. As basically it took a lot of work for Konoha to get as good as it is now, and even then it's not really standing on its 2 feet really well. As so far the only few things that are really keeping this village standing is the fact that number one, Sasuke decided to stay in the village, since Orochimaru did not go after him since he was too busy helping out with Naruto. And number two was the fact that Jiraiya had to sub in for being Hokage, considering the fact that when he tried to convince Tsunade to return, she was very immediately declining on it, considering the fact that Jiraiya did not have Naruto with him, just like he did in the main timeline, so due to that she had no one to convince her. And so due to that means Jiraiya had no choice but to fill in the role, since obviously Kakashi was just not going to do it at all. And speaking of Kakashi, unfortunately for him, he's really down in his dumps, mostly because of the fact that after Naruto's death, Kakashi put the blame on himself, and due to that, we will see him going through a very big slump, considering the fact that he even thought about multiple times of just simply quitting the Shinobi forces, considering the fact that he didn't want any more deaths to be on his hands. So due to that, yeah, the Hidden Leaf Village forces were really shaken up by this. And if you're wondering about Sakura, as I by this point I already covered the other 2 members of Team 7, Sakura by this point had actually decided to fully turn in as a medical nin and mostly just stay behind in the hospitals of Konoha. Since after the whole thing that happened with the battle between the Sand Village and the Sound Village against Konoha, this caused many of them to really lose their medical ninjas, so that means that Sakura would be one of the very few people to participate in it and actually try to help in when it came to the people. So yeah, Sakura is a medical nin just like she was in the main timeline, except she wasn't battle oriented, so that means that she couldn't really be sent out in the field. So yeah, basically Konoha, they're not doing that good, but they're still standing, so we're gonna move on from that. And if you're wondering about Naruto and Orochimaru, well, Naruto by this point had basically just completely warped the entire foundation of the Elemental Nation. Yes, I did rhyme at that very instant, and I'm not gonna lie to you, to me personally, that was fire. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even do it intentionally. But sorry, I just had to pause on that one for a little bit. Let's continue on. As what I meant by that is the fact that Naruto throughout this time had been continuing on with his goal of simply hunting down the tailed beast while also taking down the Akatsuki. Now, this actually caused some confusion to go around the entire Elemental Nations, since it seems as if an entire different organization was taking down the tailed beast, and the Akatsuki were not the only ones that they need to worry about. As basically, one by one, members of the Akatsukis have been slowly disappearing and have actually been confirmed to be killed off on several times. And not only that, but they also realized that the number of Jinchurikis that are out there have been cut down significantly, mostly due to the fact that by this point, the tailed beasts and their Jinchurikis have been completely wiped out by both of the organizations, as the Akatsukis are still hunting down the tailed beasts, while the other organization is doing the same thing, hunting them down and collecting them, each one for their own goals and desires. But here's when the twist actually ends up occurring though, as we now turn our attention to the Akatsuki, as by this point the number of Akatsuki members has been cut down significantly, as already thanks to this new organization popping up, members of the Akatsuki have actually been killed off, with the very first two surprisingly being both Kakuzu and Hidan, as these two deaths were actually so surprising to both Pain and Obito, who was controlling everything behind the scenes, that would cause them to actually realize that this organization who was hunting down the tailed beast was at a much higher threat level than they anticipated, considering the fact that both Kakuzu and Hidan were supposedly immortal, yet the two of them were the very first ones killed off, sending a message to the Akatsuki that they were not ones to deal with. So due to that, this will cause the Akatsuki to immediately be on guard, and whenever they were actually faced with this organization, it was supposed to be a kill on sight order. And even with that, members of the Akatsuki still were taken down, as the next ones up would actually be Deidara and Sasori, as they would actually try to go after Gaara, but they had failed miserably considering the fact that the organization had gone there first, and when they actually tried to face off against them, they were killed off. So due to that, the Akatsuki's numbers have been actually cut down significantly, with the only true original members of the Akatsuki that are remaining being none other than Kisame, Itachi, Konan, as well as Pain. As later on, a couple others had actually joined, the main one being of course Toby, who was very happy to join the Akatsuki and was basically just a goofball to everyone. But the next two that joined would be surprising, as rejoining the Akatsuki and the one serving their cause will be none other than Orochimaru. As after everything that happened, the Akatsuki realized exactly the situation that they were in, and Obito had no choice but to also agree with them, mostly due to the fact that with Orochimaru's research and after everything that happened with Konoha, he could be detrimental when it came to taking down this organization. So with no other choice, they decided to let Orochimaru back in, but Itachi did warn him that the second that he tried to betray them, that he'll gladly cut him down, since Itachi had gotten hold of the information about what exactly Orochimaru did at Konoha. And Konoha is where his younger brother is. So basically, that was a death threat to Orochimaru. But other than that, we can now continue on to the very next member, who only goes by the name Fox. Now when he ends up joining, he would actually be one that Orochimaru himself would honestly suggest joining. To which of course this made them very skeptical about him, but over time they came to accept him. Mostly due to the fact of his own working style, this being the fact that he was quick and efficient. Not only that, but he was silent and he didn't cause too much problem when it came to being part of the Akatsuki. Basically, he was just a reliable person who would always get the job done. So this caused him to actually be trusted relatively quickly, even by Obito, even though he had a ginormous amount of suspicions about who he was. As now that I caught you guys up on all of this is where we can now continue on to the present, as this is where we now turn to the very Akatsuki themselves. Currently right now, sitting down, as we end up seeing all the Akatsukis gather up into one place, this is when we will then see Pain begin to speak, as he was upset. And the main reason why he was upset is because of the fact that once again, they had lost another tailed beast. Over this time, a large amount of the tailed beasts had been killed off and taken away from them, as the Akatsuki had only been able to capture only 3 of them, ironically being the 3 tails, the 5 tails, and the 7 tails. But unfortunately, only those 3. As throughout this time, this organization has gotten in their way so many times that the only tailed beast that really is left remaining for them to capture is the 8 tails, who by this point is being safely guarded in Kumo, and by that I mean the Rikage is so protective when it came to B that he literally made sure that B can never exit out the village, even to do missions. So due to that means the Akatsuki are sooner or later gonna have no choice but to storm Kumo just to get the 8 tails. But right now they had more important things on the matter. As you see, by this point now, after seeing how this organization has been able to keep track of the Akatsuki's movements and everything, unaware to the rest of the members was the fact that by this point Pain and also Obito had fully suspected that there may be a traitor in the group, to which at first they thought it was just simply Fox. But over time that suspicion was dropped, mostly due to the fact that Waizetsu, who had been working for Pain, had been telling him multiple times that Fox was not the one to do it. But after hearing this only made both Pain as well as Obito's headache even worse, considering the fact that the most obvious individual of the group, who is the main key for suspicion, had just been proven to not been the one. So that meant that currently right now they were at some type of standstill, as they had no idea exactly who the traitor was, considering the fact that the most suspicious one out of the group had been completely proven to be innocent thanks to Waizetsu, as after all, Waizetsu wouldn't lie to them. So with no other choice, they decided to suspect Orochimaru, or even some of the original members that had been here from the very beginning. But unfortunately, by this point they were still drawing blanks, as there was nothing that they could do. As by this point right now in the discussion, we see Pain pretty much discussing to them about exactly what their next move is, which was to hunt down this organization and put an end to it. As after that, he would then dismiss the meeting, as everyone would go their separate ways. But as Pain was walking and everything, as he continues trying to find out exactly who this traitor may be, this is when suddenly he would then see Fox approach him. Now Pain will look at Fox with a stoic expression before asking him exactly what he wants, to which instead of speaking, all he would do is just simply pull out a file from his Akatsuki robe, as he will hand it over to Pain, who looks through it, and when he does, he is surprised. As after reading the file, he then looks directly into Fox's eyes, using the Rinnegan, making sure to be intimidating, as he would then ask him in a very serious tone, where did he find this information? To which all he would just simply say is, Konoha. As this is where we then do another time skip, as well as a change of scenes. Currently right now, changing to when it's the dead of night, we see Itachi as he was currently right now returning back to his own base of operation, as every member of the Akatsuki had one, and following along with him will be none other than Kisame. But on the way of doing this though, Itachi had noticed one weird thing, and it was a simple fact that Kisame was not cracking jokes and basically just being his usual self. Instead, he was much more quiet, as you can see like his entire mood seems to be dampened by something. Now as Itachi would analyze the situation, this is when he would then stop, as he would then ask exactly what was going on, to which this is when Kisame would then sigh. Before suddenly he ends up swinging Samehada directly at Itachi's neck, to which he ends up dodging out the way, just luckily in the nick of time. But just as Itachi would then do this is when suddenly, bursting from the ground would be none other than a ginormous snake trying to devour him. But immediately he would immediately stop it, pulling out a kunai and cutting it in half entirely. As by this point he ends up looking around to see none other than Orochimaru, as he will be just calmly chuckling standing on a tree. Now when Itachi looks at Orochimaru, he immediately shows off the Mangekyo Sharingan, pretty much declaring that right here right now, Orochimaru is dead, and no one was going to stop him. But right before he can get into the process of doing so, this is when suddenly he would then be intercepted by none other than Toby, who was giggling, as suddenly he would then drop a bunch of paper bombs on the ground, as they will all explode at the same time, supposedly end up hitting Itachi. But just as they were thinking this though, this is when suddenly all they would hear is the sound of crows, as suddenly one by one, every single one of them would then appear on the other side of where the explosion happened, as we see Itachi being completely fine. As we see Itachi then ask them what was the point of this madness, only for him to be suddenly cut off by the fact that he will be dragged away by an unknown force, as the next thing he knew his neck was in the arms of Pain, who would be staring down at him coldly, as this was Itachi's execution for betraying the Akatsuki. As Itachi will look at them in confusion, this is when suddenly he ends up of course using the crow technique once again, making sure to blow past Pain and trying to get away to safety, only to be intercepted by Fox, who blows a ginormous stream of flames directly at the crows, trying to burn them. Now this will cause Itachi to have no choice but to immediately use the body flicker to get away, but by this point he was sweating, considering the fact that he was using quite a bit of chakra, and not only that, but he had the Mangekyo active just to keep up. As this is when he begins asking questions exactly when he ever betrayed them, only for Fox to then immediately pull out the very file itself. The file that documented the history about what happened with the Uchiha massacre, and more importantly, exactly the entire deal that happened between him and Danzo, and also the deal that happened between Hiruzen as well. As basically, Itachi was working for Konoha, or at least that's what it seemed as if. But even being faced with all this evidence, and not only that, but also being faced with all the members of the Akatsuki currently, we see Itachi not even break an expression, as he looks at every last one of them coldly before calmly stating that he won't be dying tonight. And that's when Pain intercepts him by stating that he would be wrong. As immediately, one by one, every member of the Akatsuki then jump at Itachi as he'll be there trying to fight them, as this is where we will then see an epic battle between Itachi versus the Akatsuki. As Itachi will be going full rounds against every last one of them, as he continues fighting, parrying, dodging, and even busting out the Susanoo when it comes to fighting them. But even with all this, Itachi was just simply not there yet. And the one who is surprisingly the most hard-hitting of all of them, besides, of course, Pain, will be none other than Fox, as his variety of both fire, wind, water, earth, and even lightning jutsus were becoming very troubling for Itachi, as basically he was getting quickly overwhelmed in the situation to the point where his literal Mangekyo eyes were bleeding. But even then, he couldn't die. He refused to die, as after all, there was only going to be one person in this world to kill him, and that was going to be his younger brother. So with no other choice, he decided to make a drastic move, one that may be costing him, but at the end of the day, it was all in good succession in order to make sure that Sasuke is the one to finish him off, even if he's in this very weakened state. As all the Akatsuki members would then jump at him one last time, this is when all you will then see is Itachi's eyes beginning to spin, as the last thing we end up hearing from Itachi will be none other than the words Tsukuyomi, as this will be the very last thing we end up seeing right before we then do a time skip as well as a change of scenes. Turning our attention to the Hidden Leaf Village, the very first thing we end up seeing is the fact that the entire village is completely run down, but even then we still see people trying to make the best of the bad situation. As all around we see constant movement of shinobis all around, trying their very best when it comes to just simply making sure to build up their defenses, as well as also trying to train the students that are in the academy in order to get them ready for the field. Which, speaking of which, the academy has definitely undergone a ginormous amount of changes, the main one being the fact that they're really pushing the shinobi agenda, hoping to get them to become trained soldiers the minute they're out of the academy, as after all, they're going to have to be ready, especially since a war might be coming up for the Hidden Leaf Village. Since by this point, the Stone Village, now realizing that the Hidden Leaf Village is at a very low level, are thinking about attacking it. Not only that, but there's also the risk of this new organization, as well as the Akatsuki just pulling in to ruin everything else. So in the most basic sense, the Hidden Leaf Village will be currently at high alert. As we now change our attention to Sasuke. Currently right now in the Hidden Leaf Village, we see Sasuke now fully decked out in Anbu Captain gear, as he'll be surveying the entire village while in the shadows. Throughout this time, Sasuke had gained and acquired the ranking of a Anbu Captain after going on ginormous amount of missions after Naruto's death. As basically that death had truly affected Sasuke enough to the point where he'd continue pushing himself to make sure that something like that may never happen again. Since after all, Naruto was his rival, and later on in life, Sasuke truly believed that him and Naruto were friends. So due to that, he now had another reason to keep pushing himself. As he continued pushing himself to higher lanes, and he actually gotten so good enough to the point where his entire mentality had completely changed up. As instead of just simply focusing on Itachi and being done with it, Sasuke actually made friends and connections with the Konoha 12. He built up a reputation here in the village, and basically he isn't such a one-sided dimension character where his main focus is just simply taking down Itachi. But as Sasuke was surveying around the village and everything, as we not see him once again, as he'll be currently right now walking through the alleyway of the Hidden Leaf Village in one of its more deserted areas, this is when suddenly he wouldn't sense a presence behind him. Immediately he begins to take out a katana that he's been using for a while, as he turns around to face the individual, only to be surprised. As this is when suddenly he would then see someone currently right now in a dark cloak, but when that cloak is taken off, he'll be surprised at what he sees. He will see Itachi, but the man looked worse for wear. Number one being the fact that he's already missing an eye, and the other thing being the fact that his body seems heavily damaged. He had burn marks, he was bleeding quite badly. Overall, his body was in a completely ruined condition, yet here he was standing before Sasuke. As Sasuke will look at his brother in complete shock, wondering if maybe it was a genjutsu, as he even shows off the Sharingan, stating that whoever was doing this, that he would suffer a very painful fate. This is when, instead of doing anything, Itachi does nothing more but smiles at seeing his brother's face one last time, as by this point Sasuke had completely taken off the mask. And seeing his brother's face, Itachi can do nothing more but smile, as this is when suddenly he would then collapse down to the ground, as by this point he was on his knees. Now Sasuke was still in a very guarded stance as he stares down at the down form of Itachi before suddenly, just looking at his brother's face again, he remembers all the pent up feelings from earlier and from a very long time ago as he immediately grabs him by the neck and places the katana right there, asking him what was stopping him right now from ending his life. But this is when Itachi says nothing more but gives him a tap on the forehead, doing his little thing before telling Sasuke that even in death he would always care for him. And Sasuke, hearing this, will be completely thrown off guard, as his hands will literally be shaking as he looks at Itachi, wondering just why was he here. And he would just ask it, why exactly was he here? And the last thing that Itachi could really say at the moment would just simply be the word Akatsuki. As after saying this, Itachi would then begin to collapse down to the ground as Sasuke had completely let him go, as he looks at Itachi with a shocked look on his face, as Itachi realized that by this point his life was coming to an end, and that means that Sasuke wouldn't get the opportunity to truly be the one to slay him unless. As we end up seeing Sasuke once again as he'll be glaring down at the down Itachi while breathing heavily, this is when Itachi tries one last time to play the bad guy, as he looks at Sasuke directly in the eyes before telling him that if he could do that night all over again, he would. And that caused Sasuke to snap. Without any hesitation, he would use the katana to completely chop off Itachi's head. But as Itachi will be killed off, he looks at Sasuke one last time as he will go off with a smile on his face. As Sasuke would just look at the scene with a honestly disturbed look on his face as he was creeped out by what just happened. But still nonetheless, it was something that literally caused him, someone who was an Anbu captain by this point, to be literally hyperventilating at just how intense the situation was. It just made no sense. What was going on? How was this even happening? As we see him try to take deep breaths while also trying to gain control over himself, this is when suddenly all Sasuke would hear would be the screams of people as he ends up looking to the side to see a bunch of people running away from something. He looks on in confusion before finally exiting out of the alleyway, and when he does, all he will see is literally a man in the sky. As Sasuke will look at the scene in confusion with his Sharingan eyes blazing, as by this point Sasuke's Sharingan eyes were now the Mangekyo after everything that was happening, and when he does, this is when he would then hear the words. Even from a distance he could hear it. Shindra Tensei. As after saying these words, all Sasuke would see is a ginormous wave of dust just getting sent towards him, as he would also see the destruction of the village with him being caught up in it. As by this point, this is when we would then see Pain's assault on the entire Hidden Leaf village, as all around different members of the Akatsuki begin jumping in and doing their own task when it comes to it. Now during this time though, you will see that two Akatsuki members were missing, this being both Konan and Fox, as they were sent out on another mission. This mission being the fact to stand by and actually protect Nagato, considering the fact that without Nagato there will be no Pain, as they're actually here to continue surveying him and making sure to observe the entire area, as we now turn to them. As we end up seeing the two of them, as by this point Konan has finished her observation of the entire area in order to make sure that there was no danger that could possibly end up harming Nagato, with Fox also doing the same thing, as after making sure that nothing was there, they would both head back, with Konan thanking Fox for being here and thanking him for doing everything that he has done up to this point. As in that file, when it came to the information about Itachi, that was not the only thing, as the organization that has been ruining the Akatsuki's plans have been working underneath the Hidden Leaf village. So due to that, that meant that technically the Hidden Leaf village is the reason for all their problems, but if they wipe out the village, they wipe out the organization. As turning back to Konan, we see her thanking Fox once again. I should be thanking him for everything while going on an entire rant about all his accomplishments, unaware about the fact that his mask was slowly peeling away, as we see actual pieces of paper begin to peel away from his mask one by one, all the while Konan continues monologuing, mentioning all of Fox's accomplishments and everything good that he did for the Akatsuki. But as they would continue walking and as she would continue to do so, this is when suddenly she would then be stabbed in the chest. As she looks down to see a blade made of paper, as she looks down at it in complete shock before suddenly turning around, and when she does, she will see the face of someone she never thought she would see again. The face of Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, who was assumed to be dead. As she looks at Naruto in surprise before trying to attack him, only for it to be too late as Naruto would vanish. As the very next instant, we will see Konan full of slashes as she collapses on the ground. She looks at Naruto in shock before just simply asking the question why. With Naruto looking at her before scoffing, not even giving her an answer, telling her that he doesn't need to give her an answer for nothing. As the last thing Konan would see would be Naruto entering the very hideout where Nagato was. As Nagato would be there watching everything, as currently right now in the Hidden Leaf Village, we actually see that instead of Naruto facing off against all the pains, it will be Sasuke and basically the rest of the Konoha 12 facing off against them, each one trying their best. With Sasuke actually being the one to kind of play a similar role to Naruto here, except for the fact that he doesn't have, Sage Mode. But he is able to pick up a pretty good fight against all the pains, and with the help of the Konoha 12, he's actually able to pull off a victory. As Pain, or should I say Nagato, continue watching everything as he just continues waiting and biding his time, this is when suddenly he would then be stabbed, as he ends up looking down at the blade in shock before looking to see Naruto. And when he sees Naruto as well as the Akatsuki robe, this is when finally it clicks. Everything. As it all hits him at once as he realizes that Naruto was behind it all. As his only question as he begins bleeding would be, why? And this is when Naruto looks at him before asking him, in what universe does he give someone like him an answer? As right before Nagato fully bleeds out, this is when he would then hear Naruto finish him off by telling him that his dream and basically his whole point of character was something that Naruto viewed to be so pathetic that he didn't even consider Nagato throughout this entire time a human. As just like that, that'll be the end of Nagato, as in the Hidden Leaf Village, they'll actually see that this was the full end of Pain, as finally the Hidden Leaf Village was able to survive, although with many casualties. As we end up seeing Naruto, as by this point he actually ends up approaching the Ghetto statue, as this is the thing that he was actually really focusing on. As this is when suddenly we'll then see Naruto then actually use Kyoika Sugetsu, which if you guys didn't know, the mask that Naruto was wearing that entire time was Kyoika Sugetsu. As we see him stab it into the statue, and when he does, we will see the Ghetto statue then begin to twitch out and begins to act violently before eventually it ends up just completely erupting open. As this is when we would then see it, the Hogakyu. As during Naruto's time in the Akatsuki, he had completely rewritten how the Ghetto statue had worked in order for it to benefit him in the Hogakyu. As now whenever they captured a tailed beast, which was only 3 of them, he would actually use them for the Hogakyu, instead of using it for the purpose of bringing out the 10 tails. As basically, yes, Naruto had planned out everything from the start. After Danzo's death, after joining the Akatsuki, and after every single event after that, Naruto had planned it out. He made sure to do everything exactly as he intended it. Sure, did many suffer for it? Who cares? Sure, did it make him seem like a bad guy? He was, and he knew of it. But so what? At the end of the day, he was not here to play these little games. No, he was a man on a mission to accomplish his goal of playing the very deity that this world needs. The very deity that it's gonna get, no matter what they say. And he was gonna stand above all, including this Kaguya, and all he needed was one more tailed beast. And by this point, he finally got rid of his last annoyance, the Akatsuki. By this point, all of them have been wiped out. All the original ones have been wiped out after the whole battle with Konoha, with the only 2 left remaining, if you include himself, would be Orochimaru as well as Obito. And yes, Naruto knew who Obito is. And also technically White Zetsu, but you already know. White Zetsu is working for Naruto. As now with that, this is when, as Naruto would look at the Hogakyu, this is when he would then be approached by Orochimaru. As Orochimaru by this point has fully escaped the battle, as we will see him bow down to Naruto, asking him exactly what's their next move. And Naruto, after looking at the Hogakyu one last time, would then state that they're now going after the 8 tails. As this is where we now do another time skip, as well as a change of scenes. Currently right now, we see Obito losing his dang mind. By this point, after everything that happened with the Akatsuki, this organization and everything, Obito is so over it. But he still needed to continue on forward, for his ideal future, for Rin. So with no other choice, he continued on. By this point, the Akatsuki were dead, as he had lost Pain, he had lost all of them. But luckily, 2 of them had survived, Orochimaru and Fox. Although he definitely was not pleased about the outcome, well, besides the Fox, he hates Orochimaru, but at the end of the day, Basically, he has to work what he has right now. And not only that, but he was also able to get the Rinnegan from Nagato, since of course Conan was not there to put a stop to it. So thankfully, now that he had all that he needed, that means that finally things can start getting back in motion. Although it would take a couple years to build up, he could do it. But right now, we now turn to when the Akatsuki then take their final stand to capture the very last tailed beast. This being the 8 Tails. As currently right now, turning to nightfall, we end up seeing Kumo, as currently right now all their guards would be up late at night, making sure to protect the village from any incoming threats. As they continue looking on, wondering exactly when the next attack is coming, this is when suddenly they would then be surprised about the fact that one by one, every last one of them will then simultaneously end up dying. This being due to the fact of armed shinobis that appeared out of the darkness. As this when suddenly, as the Raikage would be currently sitting down in his chair, as he'd be looking out at his village, wondering exactly why was it raining at this type of night. And it was not like any small sad little rain, no, it was heavy rain, as that usually meant a bad omen, like something bad was coming. And little did he know how right he was. As this one suddenly all hell would then break loose, as one of the shinobis that was working for the Raikage would then bust into the office before announcing that their village was under attack, causing him to immediately get up on his chair as he glares angrily. All around the entirety of Kumo, we will see multiple amount of people just simply trying their best to run away from what seemed to be multiple amounts of white Zetsus. As basically we see shinobi stepping in to try to stop them, but even they were starting to get quickly overwhelmed, mostly because of the fact of just the sheer mass of white Zetsus that are flooding in the entire area. And not just white Zetsu, but also like sound shinobis as well, as this will be due to the fact that Orochimaru, like I said, is working here. As basically this will be a surprise attack on Kumo, and many of them will be caught off guard by it. Now the Raikage would immediately step up as he immediately ends up slamming the ground hard, causing the entire attention of all the white Zetsu, as well as all the shinobi, to immediately be focused on him. As he immediately begins activating the lightning cloak before suddenly disappearing and blitzing a larger majority of the shinobis that are facing off against his own. As this is when he begins to actually release a pretty hot-blooded speech telling the people of Kumo to fight with pride and continue fighting until the very end, as that was the way Kumo shinobis did it. And after hearing this response from the Raikage, all the Kumo shinobi would then release a cheer as one by one every last one of them began to charge in battle with a new set of determination, as now the entirety of Kumo was now an all-out battlefield. As we see citizens trying to run away, shinobi entering battle with everything they got, and even the Raikage stepping in there to try his best to face off against them. But as he was doing this though, this one suddenly he would then be hit in the face by an explosive kunai, causing him massive damage, and surprising many of the other shinobis that were watching. But even when taking massive damage, we will see the Raikage still standing, as he'll be standing just fine, but this time you see massive damage on the side of his face as he glares angrily at the person who did the damage to him. As this is when we end up seeing that right across the roof that actually threw the paper bomb directly to his face will be none other than Obito, as he'll be still wearing the mask of course, but still nonetheless he looked menacing, as is when the Raikage would then immediately blitz off before asking him if he was the one who attacked his village, with Obito saying nothing more, as he then immediately blows the Raikage away, as this is when the Raikage will actually get a good look into that one little socket that showed his eye, and when he does he'll be surprised, as he will see the purple color of the Rinnegan. He will look at the dojutsu in complete shock, unable to believe that such a powerful and legendary dojutsu still existed in this time period. But even with that dojutsu, it didn't change the fact that this man attacked his village, as this is when the Raikage then tells him that he's gonna kill him for even thinking of daring to try to harm his village, as he will then dash at him with a lightning hammer. As we now turn our attention to Naruto. By this point, Naruto is currently walking through the entire village, as he's literally treating it as if it was nothing. The screams of the innocent people that were getting harmed, he couldn't care less. The sound of shinobis dying out, he didn't even bat an eye. As by this point, Naruto has fully just immersed himself in this experience, as by now he's finally about to achieve his goal that he's been waiting for quite a while. As by this point now, Naruto's at the solemn age of 16. He waited 16 whole years for this, and now here it was. And to think that in his old world he waited even longer, which was insane, but now is all about to be worth it. as after going through the ginormous hordes of shinobis, and after getting them all distracted, as Orochimaru was also playing a role here, that being the fact that he was the one that's pretty much keeping the rest of the Kumo shinobis on their toes, as Naruto would eventually end up arriving to the area where B is presumed to be held. As we end up seeing a bunch of the shinobis there protecting the place, then look at Naruto before declaring that he has no passageway here, as they try to attack him only for them to suffer a quick death. As Naruto would then walk directly to the area where B is at, and when he does, he immediately just explodes the door wide open. As this is when we will then see B sitting down in a cross position, as currently right now he was writing down his new lyrics that he just thought of. But when he does see Naruto, he immediately ends up smirking, as this is when he then begins to just go on his whole spiel, rapping towards Naruto and everything, all the while Naruto shows no reaction. And seeing no reaction, this is when B would then suddenly end up pulling out a total of 16 blades, as he then rushes at Naruto. But the unfortunate thing is about this whole thing was the fact that Naruto was not here to play games. As after rushing at Naruto, we will see B then begin to immediately use his technique to insert Naruto with multiple different blades and seemingly kill him off. As B will be pulling a pose while doing this as he looks on with a smirk, only to then suddenly cough up blood as he ends up seeing that the entire reality around him would then shatter like glass. And when he does, he sees that all the blades that he sent out have been inflicted upon him. All the injuries that he inflicted on Naruto have been inflicted on himself, as he looks at it in shock, wondering just how. But as he was thinking this though, this is when he would then be stabbed, as he ends up looking just to see Naruto's eyes staring coldly at him. As B ends up cursing, as this is when suddenly the 8-Tails tries his best to try to save B, but unfortunately it was too late. As this is when Naruto then acted the effect of Kyokusugetsu, and it was a wrap. As we end up seeing B's body now laid out on the ground, as we see the 8-Tails stop moving completely. As with that, Naruto ends up taking back Kyokusugetsu, as this is when he ends up bringing out the Hokage. As finally it was here, he had finally done it. As Naruto would then go through the final process of creating the Hokage, and now it was finally complete. His perfect weapon, his perfect invention, and basically the very thing that allowed him to become who he was always meant to be from the very beginning. As just as Naruto would hold the Hokage, this is when we will see two people then enter, this being both Orochimaru and Obito. Now by this point, Obito looks at Fox as he sees B taken down, and when he does, he actually ends up cursing Fox for everything. He ends up cursing him out for actually killing the Tail Beast when their job was to literally extract the Tail Beast for the ghetto statue, and he ruined it. As he ends up cursing him out for this, but this is when, instead of showing any remorse or, going with his silent play, we actually hear him chuckling for the first time. And his chuckle would be so unnerving to both Obito and Orochimaru that it actually causes them to take a step back. As this one suddenly Naruto begins to emit a ginormous wave of pressure, as this pressure was so eerie that it actually begins to crack up the ground underneath them, and it actually caused both Orochimaru and Obito to collapse down onto their knees. Now Obito tries to see if it's an illusion using the Rinnegan, but even when he does so, it was pointless, as he realized that whatever this was, it was far surpassing even the power of the Rinnegan, which was something he never heard of. As this is when Naruto would then begin to go through the process of merging himself with the Hokage, as he looks directly in the eyes of Obito, revealing his true appearance all along. As Obito as well as Orochimaru will look on in complete shock as we see Naruto enter his true form, as now Naruto had achieved it, the power that surpassed all of that of reality and granted him what he truly desired, as now Naruto had truly achieved everything that he wanted, right here, right now. Now Obito will look at this transformation as he just simply couldn't make sense of it, as he would ask what exactly was going on, only for Naruto to tell him to be quiet. And when he does, Obito would immediately end up taking some massive damage, as he actually ends up getting cut apart in multiple different parts of his body, but even then he was still standing. As he ends up cursing out in agony, all the while Orochimaru was just shook into silence, as he didn't even want to breathe while being in his presence, as he realized that this was the power to make him immortal, as he was feeling quite happy over the fact that he was able to do so many things to assist him, or so he thought. As Obito begins cursing on the ground, this is when he begins to ask exactly what was going on, only for Orochimaru to then fill in the blanks. As basically Orochimaru is acting as if he's Naruto's servant pretty much, explaining all of Naruto's plans, his glory, and basically everything. with Obito literally getting completely mind crushed because of it. This man lost his mind as he begins acting wildly and insane, as he glares angrily at Naruto, not caring for the pressure, not caring for everything, as he then tells Naruto to go to hell, as he tries to burn him only for it to amount to nothing. As unfortunately for Obito, Naruto had already ascended beyond the levels of man. As just as Obito would try one last time to obliterate Naruto with a ginormous fireball, it fails. As just like that, we will then see the end of Obito after Naruto appears right in front of him, and with just a simple touch of his finger, we will see all of Obito's body just completely obliterated, leaving nothing left behind. As Orochimaru will be there looking on, as he begins to compliment Naruto, glazing him, as he begins telling him how amazing he was and everything. This is when Naruto wouldn't look at Orochimaru before telling him that he had assisted him for the longest time, done everything he asked for, and done them exactly the best way he could. And when he heard this, Orochimaru smiled in anticipation, thinking that yes, finally, he's about to achieve his dream, right? Right? But this is when he would then be hit with the cold reality. As this when suddenly Orochimaru would then be stabbed by Kyoiko Sugetsu. He looks at it in complete shock before looking at Naruto, as this is when Naruto would then tell him that he should be grateful. As this one suddenly we wouldn't see the entirety of Orochimaru's reality then take a complete shift, as now he was then stuck in this endless void. Orochimaru would then begin to ask what was going on, as he couldn't move his lower body. All he could do was move his neck, and that was it. As he looks around in confusion, wondering what was going on. As this is when Naruto's voice begins to ring out throughout the entire area, letting him know that he had fully done exactly what Orochimaru wanted. He wanted immortality, and he gave it to him. Except he was showing Orochimaru the true curse of immortality. Basically, when you live for so long, soon you'll be known to live throughout everything, meaning that by the time everything else is gone, you're left with nothing. As now Orochimaru would just be there, stuck in this endless void. He's now immortal basically, but the thing is, he's only immortal in the mind. In the body, he's still going to be wasted away, but at least the mind will continue preserving it, continue being stuck in this zone forever. As basically this was the fate that he wanted, right? He's immortal. He can be as long as he wanted in there, for all of eternity. As that would be the tragic fate for Orochimaru, as now, finally, it was finally time to put an end to this. As now with Naruto at his full absolute power, this is when we would then suddenly hear the sound of glass shattering, as Naruto would open a hole in space. As this is when he begins to rise up, as finally, it was finally time for him to await his destiny. Currently right now, we now see, still being sealed away, will be none other than Kaguya, as she'll be there floating around in this empty space, but still able to see everything, as she saw everything that was happening in the other world, the world that she was once a part of, but she also saw what was happening now. As this is when suddenly her eyes would then be awakened to see none other than Naruto arrive, as he was still in his Hokugyu form. And when he does, he looks at her with a smirk, as Kaguya looks at him, as she immediately sees something that surprises her. This being the fact that although Naruto's appearance is much more wilder, and although he has a completely different vibe to him, he resembles somewhat like her son, Hagoromo. As she looks at him for a solid moment, as she tries to grab his face, when Naruto grabbing her arm with a soft smile on his face, before completely slapping the shit out of her. She'll be sent flying from the blow, as she'll be caught off guard by it, as this is when Naruto begins to talk down, telling her that there was only one divine being in this world, and that being was him. And Kaguya, after hearing this, would immediately snap out of it, as this is when she begins to activate her own abilities. As just like that, portals begin to open up, as we end up seeing these metal rods then be shot out as they try to stab into Naruto, but when they do, they're immediately deflected. As this is where we then see the battle between Naruto as well as Kaguya. As we see the fight start off with Kaguya making full use of her portals, abusing it since that was the only thing that could truly catch Naruto off guard. She'll be transferring them to different areas now, because since Naruto had entered this plane, he pretty much just freed her, but this also led to the fact that she's now forced to face him. As she'll continue warping to different realities, as Naruto will be continuously pushed, but even then he was completely fine. As besides being a little bit annoyed of the reality warping, he was still dogging Kaguya throughout this fight, as she couldn't do anything. As she tried to make use of her ash killing bone technique, but unfortunately that never worked against Naruto, considering the fact that he could always see them coming and dodge them. She tried to absorb chakra, but the thing is, and the most surprising thing, is the fact that Naruto doesn't use chakra. He's using an entirely different energy source, one that far exceeds that of what Kaguya is capable of using. As after getting sent flying out of another dimension, this is when Kaguya will then be by this point in a frozen plain, as she ends up seeing the snow kick up as Naruto ends up arriving, when Naruto's booming voice being heard. This is when he begins to announce to Kaguya the true difference between the two of them, as he really begins to show off his might, the might that puts him far above even the heavens of this world, as he tells Kaguya that this world only needs one person who could truly exist in this plane, and this being him. As Kaguya stares down at him, this is when she tries charging up one last technique, this being the truth-seeking balls. These things having the power to erase anything out of existence, and she believes that this might be the only thing that will be able to stop him, as she will do just that. She charges up the balls before silently releasing them, and she will release not just like the small ones that Naruto will be using in the main timeline, but actual the ginormous ones, as these ones actually begin to absorb not only Naruto, but also the entire reality that they were in, as Kaguya ends up fleeing from it, escaping. As just like that, we end up seeing the entire reality that was there, that they teleported into, just be completely wiped out because of Kaguya. As Kaguya ends up looking at the destruction she caused, as she believes that now she's finally free. But as she was thinking this though, she would then be surprised as the next thing she knew, she would then be blown away by multiple slash marks appearing on her body, as she'd be sent flying and crashing to the ground. She looks down in complete shock before finally she ends up turning around to see none other than Naruto, as he'll be staring down at her as she looks at him in complete shock, as Naruto would tell her that she was pitiful, and even tells her straight to her face that compared to the Soul King, that she was nothing, and compared to him, she might as well have not existed. As after stating these final words, this is when Naruto wouldn't charge up Kyoika Sugetsu as he looks at her one last time, as this is when she tries one last time to try to counter him to do anything, but unfortunately it was too late, as Naruto would simply say the words, "Black Coffin." As this is when we would then see Kaguya, the so-called rabbit goddess, then be absorbed as she tries to do everything in her power to escape, but it was too late, as she gets absorbed into the black coffin, and just like that, after closing his fists, it'll be wrapped up. We end up seeing Kaguya be completely gone from this world, as there was nothing left of her. There was not even a speck of it left. As after doing this, we see Naruto now reigning in peace as finally he had done it, but unaware to him was the fact that he had no idea just how much of a big thing he had done. As all around the entire elemental nations, we end up seeing something completely shocking, this being the fact that chakra, the very core thing of their very existence, the things that make the world exactly how it is right now, have been completely taken away from the world, as it seems to have just completely fade away from existence. As we end up seeing that many people, even those with dojutsus or special conditions, were completely losing it because of the fact that chakra is now gone. As basically Sasuke with his Sharingan, those didn't exist anymore. The Yamanakas with their whole body switching thing, they didn't exist anymore. Choji couldn't enhance himself, Shikamaru could not control shadows, Lee couldn't enter the 8 inner gates. Basically everyone that had access to chakra no longer had it anymore, as it was just gone from the world. As basically he had truly done what he set it out to do. He removed the one that was in control of this world and made himself the new ruler. As this is where we now do a time skip for the last time. By this point now, we end up seeing the elemental nations once again, as by this point, they have completely changed their ways. Well, not completely, but they're undergoing the process of it. The old shinobi lifestyle is slowly fading away as we see new generations setting in, new technology, as well as new sources of energies just being created, mostly due to the fact that now they have lost chakra, which has severely limited them. As now, thanks to them not having chakra, the dangers of their world has completely shrunken down by quite a lot. As literally, because of chakra being gone, that means that most of the powerful beings, like the tail beasts in this world, are no longer showing up. Which, I mean, it's not like they were ever going to return. After all, someone else already has them, and someone else is already making full use of them in his own selfish ways. As we end up seeing that by this point, Konoha is turning itself into a new direction, as by now, the Shinobi Academy has been fully closed down. The title of Hokage is actually slowly losing its meaning, and is actually getting replaced by another one, as pretty much there's going to be a new title fitting in the role of Hokage, and basically all around the entire elemental nations things were changing. society was evolving. As we now turn into this very empty like void, as we end up seeing currently right now, sitting down on his throne as he observed it all, will be none other than Naruto. As he sits there with a smirk on his face as finally he had done it. He had achieved his dream. As now with this being said, this will be the end to What If Naruto was Aizen's reincarnation. Thank y'all so much for tuning into this video, y'all. I kid you not, this was the most stressful what if I had to ever undergone. Like dog, even now, this is the amount of audio that is registered, remember. Like, you guys clearly hear in my voice is nearly gone because of this what if, and it's because of the fact of how many times I had to record it. Like dog, this what if, I did not record only 2 hours, y'all. This what if took more than 2 hours. Like, I kid you not, the 2 hours of audio are the only ones that have been registered. Cause God, guys, the amount of times I made mistakes, the amount of times I had to stop and go back, like guys, I lost a lot of my skills when it came to making Naruto what ifs. I kept forgetting the most simplest plot lines. I didn't know how to make a full sentence without getting too in depth in it. Like guys, it was stressful. Your boy was literally losing it. But you know what? I'm glad I did it nonetheless. Sure, I'm not gonna be doing Aizen's what if, like I'm not gonna be doing Aizen reincarnation what if more precisely in quite a while, alright? I'm sorry, but no, I'm not gonna be doing this in a while until, you know, until I finally get my head removed from this whole experience. And even though it was a very tough experience, I did enjoy it nonetheless. I enjoy making this content for y'all. I enjoy making these what ifs because it's actually something I enjoy doing. And overall, I just really enjoy being on YouTube and being able to share these stories with y'all, you know? And listen, y'all, like no jokes or anything, I want to thank y'all truly for getting me to 10K. Like, I know it's been a while, and I know I've been in 10K for a while, but it still just blows my mind of the fact that I actually was able to reach it. And it was thanks to y'all support. It was thanks to y'all commenting. It was thanks to y'all giving me what if ideas that I was actually able to reach that subscriber mark. And I want to say that I'm truly grateful for y'all and all the ideas that you guys given me. And I hope to see more of your ideas in the comment section down below, as yes, I'm still going to be liking them, and yes, I'm still going to be checking them out. So that way I can make future what ifs, well, more what ifs in the future. You guys already know what I mean. But yeah, y'all, I don't really got much else to say. It's really late at night right now, so I really got to go to bed. So I'm going to do just that. So with that being said, peace and have a lovely day.
Colors, this is the color, this is the color, this is the color.